Chapter 209. The dust dissipated, revealing its true appearance. A heavy mechanical arm that was several times thicker than a human arm was grabbing Lun's fist tightly. The high-density platinum alloy was dark and cold, full of the luster of steel. Han Xiao, who was controlling this huge mechanical arm, had already put on the Viper modified. The sleek black mechanical suit was like a human body with bulging muscles. Everyone was stunned. What is this thing? Han Xiao's right hand that was not wearing the mechanical arm grabbed Lun's arm. Lun wanted to break free, but he found that Han Xiao's strength was now on par with his, and he could not break free for a while. The Viper modified provided almost 80 strength and 50 dexterity. Han Xiao's strength, dexterity, and endurance were now not inferior to any pugilist below LV60. Lun was still measuring the difference between them like before, and he was caught off guard. The heavy mechanical arm on Han Xiao's left hand roared, and he smashed Lun's head into the ground. He continued to smash Lun's head into the ground, and the crater on the ground quickly grew larger. Iron Fist, mounted heavy mechanical arm, left, quality, blue good, basic attributes, attack 85 to 88, defense 26 to 30, power rank 77, durability 986/1050 requirements, 45 STR, 45 to 90 STR, minus 45% attack speed, minus 15% STR over 90 STR. Does not count the equipment's attribute bonus. Additional effect, plus 28 STR length. 1, 24 meters. Includes external armor. Weight, 85. 5 pounds additional ability. Bionic, human. Can make movements like a human's arm through torque and transmission straps. Will not restrict the operator's arm movements. Very flexible. Additional ability, impact resistance. External armor is made of platinum alloy. Extra durability, not easy to wear out. Special feature, removable remark. Big fist will smash your head. Since he was acting alone, Han Xiao had all his trump cards in his equipment bag. He disassembled the heavy mechanical arm into its components, making it easy to carry around. Furthermore, the assembly was very simple and fast, so it could be quickly formed in the face of a battle. When Vanessa saw Lun being pressed to the ground, she was both shocked and furious. She quickly rushed forward. Han Xiao did not dodge and fought with Vanessa in close combat. His punches and kicks contained immense strength, causing the ground to crack inch by inch. Shockwave Blast was a mid-range attack. It did not have enough lethality and would not hurt the mech at all. Viper's modified power mode had the upper hand. The two of them were extremely agile, and their fight was like a flash of lightning. In the eyes of the bystanders, it was just two blurry figures entangling with each other. Only the continuous loud noises and the destruction of the environment by the aftermath of the battle could tell how dangerous the two of them were. The black fist hit Vanessa's face several times, and her nose started to bleed. At the same time, Lun finally pulled himself out of the ground. His head was bleeding, and he pounced forward with a roar. However, halfway through, Han Xiao suddenly swung his fist and swept Vanessa to the side. He then took out the folded ghost sniper rifle on his back and aimed it at Lun. The black muzzle gave off an even more dangerous aura than before. Lun's hair stood on end. Han Xiao pulled the trigger. Flaming Will. Fatal critical hit. Overload. This spear strike was the most lethal attack he had ever unleashed up to this point. It was not just the effect of his active skills. His passive skills made his shooting power, critical hit rate, and machinery affinity even stronger. Furthermore, his gun had undergone the best enhancement. Everything was one level higher than before. This was the power of maxed out skills. Bang! A huge cavity appeared in Lun's chest, and blood gushed out like a fountain. You have dealt 1942 damage to Lun, LV 58. Damage reduction has been calculated. It was extremely close to 2,000 damage. One had to know that Lun's HP was only around 4,000 to 5,000. One shot, and almost half of his HP was gone. Lun knelt on the ground, his whole body twitching. He raised his head and looked at Han Xiao, his eyes full of shock and disbelief. Under the cold mask, An emotionless mechanical voice sounded. Didn't you say that you were going to paint the floor with my brain? Han Xiao pressed Lun to the ground with his right hand and smashed his left mechanical arm into Lun's head. Lun was paralyzed by this shot and had no energy to protect his body. The steel kissed his skull again and again. His skin and flesh were torn apart, and his bones were crushed. Blood splattered everywhere and dyed the ground and mechanical arm red. You have killed Lun, LV-58. You have received 175,000 EXP. Lethal shot, talent, unlock progress 43/50-inch Lun. Vanessa screamed. Her voice was filled with sadness, hatred, and anger. Then she turned and ran. Black Phantom was unexpectedly strong. She did not want to die. Only by surviving could she have a chance to take revenge. That's why I said that it's not good to live. Han Xiao shook his head and unbuckled the heavy mechanical arm. The huge metal arm fell to the ground. Han Xiao gave a command, and the armor on the left and right sides suddenly slid open, revealing a row of densely packed small holes. Dozens of thin, arrow-shaped black shadows shot out and landed around Vanessa. They exploded one after another and made a high-frequency sound wave. These were all miniaturized versions of the explosive grenades. Han Xiao made them into smaller arrowheads. He then added a simple firing module to Viper, which allowed him to release this portable and practical control weapon. The boom grenade's attribute was endurance. Although Vanessa was a pugilist, dozens of boom grenades were too much for her to handle. She fell to the ground in pain. With a few leaps, Han Xiao activated the thermal incisor gauntlets and clawed at Vanessa's eye sockets. He then activated the sunworm flamethrower on his wrist. Vanessa was quickly turned into a piece of charcoal in the midst of screams and the burnt smell. Vanessa's struggle before she died was all blocked by Viper's modified armor. Han Xiao let go of his hand and let the body fall to the ground. He activated the various scanning modules of the mechanical suit. Through smell analysis, the image of the hidden demon was outlined on the scanning panel. He was now lying in the area where the boom grenades exploded, twitching in pain. The hidden demon was already scared out of his wits by Han Xiao. It had only been a few months since the last time they fought, and the hidden demon had already reached a level that shocked him. He regretted accepting this mission and quickly wanted to retreat. However, he was very unlucky. When he was secretly escaping, he was knocked over by the aftermath of the explosion. Saved me a lot of trouble. Han Xiao broke the hidden demon's arms and legs. He then took out a mini GPS device and violently stabbed it into the hidden demon's body. He then slapped him unconscious and nodded with satisfaction. This way I won't get lost. The scene was a mess. A large number of Overmera spectators had gathered. They were all shocked by Han Xiao's cruel methods. The players who had been revived stood in the distance. Their throats were dry. "This is so strong," Zhu Yuxin exclaimed. She had just recorded all the battle videos. She had a feeling that this material would definitely be popular. Black Phantom had never shown his mechanical suit before. The strong performances that they had seen so far were actually just the tip of the iceberg. This was his true strength. No, maybe Black Phantom was hiding more things. The members of the Bamboo Rain Guild were excited. They felt that they had found information that no one else knew. Among all the players, only they had encountered this unexpected storyline. Zhu Yuxin recorded the whole process and was very excited. Lagos's face was full of fear. His teeth were chattering, and his legs were shaking uncontrollably. The three strong people that he had high hopes for had been killed so easily. According to Black Phantom's original strength, Lun and the other two would have been a piece of cake. Who would have known that he had such a terrifying trump card? How was this possible? Lun and the other two are all top supers. They are legends who have been famous for a long time. I've asked the professionals, how could Black Phantom kill them so easily? Lagos cannot believe it. Without anyone to rely on, facing the murderous Black Phantom, Lagos's body went soft. Regret could not describe his feelings. Han Xiao walked to Lagos' side, patted Lagos' shoulder, and said softly, "I've already spared you once. You can't kill me." Lagos tried to act tough. I'm a manager of the home sect. If you kill me, the home sect, before he could finish. The sharp blade slid across his neck. Blood splattered softly. There was no hesitation. Lagos' eyes widened. He held his neck and fell down. His temperature dropped along with the blood. His leaking windpipe made a sizzling sound. He looked up at Han Xiao in disbelief. Chapter 210. Looking at Lagos' body, the home faction was furious, but they did not have the guts to challenge the current Han Xiao. A living example was lying in front of them, and their faces were full of excitement. At this time, Todd stepped out from the crowd and said in a deep voice, "This was all Lagos' decision. He deserved it. I can make the decision, and the home faction will not hold a grudge because of this." The home faction was surprised. They did not expect Todd to step out at this time and even admit defeat. Han Xiao did not comment and asked, "You are?" "Todd, Dilot's brother, Lagos' uncle. I'm in charge of the home faction now." Todd forced himself to be calm. The home faction had a weird look in their eyes. They were amazed by Todd's ability to take advantage of the situation. Once Lagos died, he immediately took over as the leader. However, what Todd said was exactly what they were thinking, so no one said anything. They silently agreed with Todd's position. The powerful reinforcements they had invited were easily killed. Han Zhao's strength was overwhelming. Everyone knew that if they still wanted to cause a conflict now, they would be asking for death. The other factions had different expressions, but they all had the same thought. Black Phantom cannot be provoked. Give me another room. Han Xiao took back all kinds of machines and glanced at the ruins. I'll arrange it for you, Xiao Ming said hurriedly after receiving Xiao Jin's signal. After Han Xiao left, the higher-ups of the various factions looked at each other. Black Phantom has overwhelming strength and does not care about being our enemy, but he still insists that he is not the murderer. Maybe he really did not do the assassination, Sei-Chi said. But Lagos died in his hands. This is a new grudge, the leader of the Northern School said. Todd interrupted him and said, Lagos brought this upon himself. We, the home sect, will not hold a grudge against him for revenge. Everyone looked at him with disdain, selectively forgetting that they also thought the same. Then what about Black Phantom? Someone asked. Leaving an invincible monster in the headquarters was like having a fishbone stuck in his throat. He felt very insecure. Xiao Jin said indifferently. He just wants to wash away the suspicion. When the truth is out, he will naturally leave, so don't provoke him. Arriving at the new house, Han Xiao woke up the captive hidden demon. He had implanted a tracking device in the hidden demon's body. Even though it was invisible to the naked eye, he could still determine its location. What are you trying to do? The hidden demon was terrified. Han Xiao took off his viper and put the equipment into his bag. He said with interest, I heard that your invisibility ability came from an accident during an experiment. Your skin has mutated. If I peel off your skin, it'll definitely be worth a lot of money. The hidden demon broke out in cold sweat. Don't do anything rash. You are now my captive. Do you think you have the right to negotiate? The hidden demon was speechless. Han Xiao stopped teasing him and knocked him out, injected him with a strong hypnotic agent, tied him up, and threw him aside. Han Xiao did not kill the hidden demon at the moment because the darknet had a bounty for the hidden demon. If he was alive, he could be exchanged for some money. He was prepared to accept the mission and hand over the hidden demon. Completing the mission immediately would maximize the benefits. In this conflict, Han Xiao had displayed overwhelming strength. The Overmera did not dare to offend him at all. Under the premise of absolute strength, his decision to stay reduced the suspicion of many factions. Moreover, Han Xiao was currently in an unsolvable situation. Now, it was the Overmera that did not want to have a conflict with him. This time, the Overmera wanted to provoke a conflict between him and the Overmera, but it had almost failed. At the very least, the Overmera did not dare to face him directly. However, this was not enough. The instigator was still not found. Han Xiao felt that there were two possibilities. The first was that the instigator gave up on their plan and continued to hide. The second was that they wanted to find a way to salvage the situation or even attack him. However, the possibility of the latter was not high. He had already proven that he was not someone to be trifled with. After Lagos died, the home faction became very low-key. Todd did not hold any grudges. He was more concerned with the benefits in front of him. Other than organizing people to investigate Delot's assassination, he was also secretly contacting various factions to gain support for the successor selection. With Delo's death, his son, Lagos, was the most likely successor, but he was killed by Han Shao. Now, the successor's position was completely up in the air. All the factions had ulterior motives and were eyeing the power of the head of the family. It was a sign of a storm. On the surface, everyone was concerned about the truth of Delot's death, but in fact, they were secretly more concerned about the successor selection. Of course, before the assassin was found, the selection would not start. Han Shao was the main person involved in this incident, but he was also an outsider. He did not care about this. These days, he was cooped up in his room and gathered information through the Darknet Intelligence Network and the Bamboo Rain Guild. He was searching for information about the Overmera. After 2 days, Xiao Jin came to his door and said that he had found an important clue. After checking the guards and surveillance cameras that night and comparing the testimonies and videos, I found some clues. That night, an assistant of a senior member of the Northern School went out and disappeared for 27 minutes. This senior member of the Northern School is called Su Dinghua. He is 45 years old and is a local of the Northern Continent. He has always been very low-key. In fact, I have been paying attention to him for a long time. When I planted a spy in the Northern School, I found out that Su Dinghua was secretly in cahoots with Raylan. His assistant was also changed a few years ago, which happened to be the same year that Su Dinghua and Raylan started contact. There were many senior members who secretly contacted other factions, but they all had their own plans. However, Su Dinghua was obviously instigated by Raylan. Xiao Jin brought a lot of evidence. Han Shao looked through it, and the evidence did indeed point to Su Dinghua. Han Shao thought about it carefully. Overmera was a partner of Theseus. Weakening Overmera was equivalent to weakening Theseus. This would make Overmera a strong enemy and cause internal strife. As a third party, Raylan could benefit from this, so they did have a motive to do this. The Northern School was the most inconspicuous, but if there was a conspiracy, they were undoubtedly the most secretive party. Didn't the other factions find this information? Han Shao waved the document in his hand. I'm not sure. Xiao Jin shook his head. I got the information about Su Dinghua secretly colluding with Raylan by coincidence. The other factions might not know. Then why are you looking for me? Han Shao asked. Raylan might have planted many experts around Su Dinghua to protect him. I hope you can help us capture Su Dinghua and his henchmen. This is also a good opportunity to clear the suspicion. I think you'll want to do it yourself. Xiao Jin said sincerely. If you want a reward, that's not a problem. Han Shao stared at Xiao Jin for a long time. Suddenly, he smiled. Pay according to the market price. I'll help you this time. Okay. Xiao Jin nodded. At night, Han Shao began to move. Since he had revealed Viper, he also wore it this time. However, he did not equip the heavy mechanical arm. Infiltration did not require such a hard weapon. Su Dinghua's mansion was relatively remote. Han Shao took out his computer to hack into the area's network and froze the cameras. He then avoided the guards and climbed over the wall to enter the mansion. Su Dinghua's mansion was located at the edge of the upper echelon. The defense of the mansion was weak. With Han Zhao's current level and strength, infiltration was not difficult at all. He quietly went to the study. The lights were on. Han Shao leaned against the wall and scanned his vision with his electromagnetic field. He found that there was no one in the study. Han Shao quietly walked in. He looked around. The building was made of ordinary bricks and wood. There was no special metal that could block detection. The layout of the room was clear. There's a hidden safe behind the painting beside the desk. Han Zhao's eyes flashed. Just as he was about to open the safe, he suddenly stopped. After carefully looking around, Han Shao did not care about the safe. Instead, he went to the desk and tried to open the drawers. They were all locked. However, This was not a problem for him. As a mechanic who could build guns and robots, it would be too embarrassing if he could not even open a lock. Moreover, Han Xiao was very experienced in picking locks. The drawers were filled with paper documents. They were all internal information of Overmera. There were also many reports. After flipping through them for a while, most of them were unimportant documents. However, he found a note with a string of numbers that seemed to be the safe's password. There was also a small metal key that seemed to be used to open the safe. It's too obvious. Han Xiao shook his head and closed the drawer. He did not take the key to open the safe. A safe hidden behind a painting. This method was too common. The key and password were deliberately left behind. It was like a deliberate bait. There was a high chance that the safe was a bait or a trap that would trigger the alarm. After all, the password of the safe was usually remembered by the person. Of course, there was also the possibility that he guessed wrong. However, Han Xiao was only there to capture someone. Once he captured someone, he would open the safe. When he came to the living room, Han Xiao heard voices. A few guards were chatting. Tactical Scan and Life Strength Database found that the strength of this group of enemies was around LV-20. They were not normal guards and could be supers. If they were normal people, it meant that they were very elite and had a very high level of subclass. Looks like it's right. Han Xiao nodded. Su Dinghua's guards were hiding their strength. There was definitely something wrong. He went upstairs and came to the bedroom. Su Dinghua was resting. Han Xiao directly rushed in and knocked out Su Dinghua before he could even scream. He then tied him up with a blanket. There were 8 guards in the mansion, as well as Su Dinghua's assistant. Han Xiao did not plan to let anyone go. Back in the living room, Han Xiao did not hide anymore and directly broke in. Who is it? The guards hurriedly pulled out their guns. However, with the powerful mechanical suit, these 4 guards were knocked over in just 2 to 3 seconds. The commotion attracted attention. The radar detected that other guards were quickly approaching. Han Xiao directly broke through the wall and with a loud boom, knocked over the guards one by one. Su Dinghua's assistant hid the best. He was around LV-40, but he still could not hold on for more than 10 seconds before Han Xiao broke his arms and legs and knocked him unconscious. The difference in strength was too big, but it was not difficult for Han Xiao. Han Xiao's destructive power was like demolition. The entire mansion was a mess, and the rumbling sound could be heard. Outside the mansion, Xiao Jin was already on standby. Seeing that Han Xiao had succeeded, he immediately rushed in with his men. He saw that Su Dinghua and his guards were thrown in the yard, and no one had escaped. Han Xiao stood at the side and did not plan to leave. Xiao Jin did not avoid Han Xiao and directly interrogated Su Dinghua and the others in the yard, waking them up with water. Su Dinghua saw this and knew that they had been exposed. How did you find out? Su Dinghua was shocked and disappointed. Chapter 211. You bribed Miri to bring Black Phantom to the scene as soon as the assassination was discovered. You wanted to cause a conflict so that the chaotic battle would bury more clues. You even arranged for people to kill Miri in the chaos to silence her. Xiao Jin listed a lot of clues. Su Dinghua closed his eyes in pain and murmured to himself, I knew this day would come. If I am exposed, I will die. Then Su Dinghua looked at his assistant and said, I was the one who assassinated the leader, but I was not the mastermind. He was the mastermind. Raylan gave me a lot of benefits and promised me more, so I worked for them. He was the spy sent by Raylan to monitor me and control my actions. This plan was also proposed by him. The assistant stared at him angrily. You're crazy. Do you think you can still live? Su Dinghua interrupted him and said, I work for you for the benefits. I don't need the benefits you gave me anymore. Now that I'm exposed, Raylan won't have an easy time either. The assistant's eyes suddenly turned white, his lips turned purple, and he started foaming at the mouth. He twitched and died. When Su Dinghua spoke, he knew he was going to die. He bit the poison in his tooth and killed himself. The other guards followed suit. Raylan people were famous for their cold-bloodedness and loyalty. No one was surprised by this. Han Xiao crossed his arms and watched. He had no intention of stopping them. Soon, only Su Dinghua was left alive. Xiao Hai sneered. It's too late to fix it now. It's not fixing it. I knew I was going to die. Su Dinghua shook his head. Xiao Jin interrupted. Su Dinghua, you're also an old man in Overmera. The leader treated you well. How could you kill him? Ha ha. Su Dinghua suddenly laughed out loud. He laughed so hard that tears came out. He jokingly said, Second Master Xiao, this is not something you should say. Your blood is much colder than mine. Xiao Jin was expressionless and unmoved, but Xiao Hai slapped Su Dinghua's face and shouted, Looks like you want to die a slower death. The people from the other factions had already heard the news and rushed over. They watched this scene in bewilderment. Su Dinghua laughed for a while, then suddenly said sadly, I will personally apologize to the First Master. Xiao Hai took out a full set of interrogation tools and coldly said, Then you have plenty of time to choose your words. Enough. He has admitted that he did it. Take him back and interrogate him. One of the leaders of the Northern School couldn't help but speak. Su Dinghua was one of the higher-ups of the Northern School. It was very embarrassing for the Northern School to be tortured in public. Su Dinghua was a spy. It didn't represent the standpoint of the Northern School, but it still brought shame to the Northern School. Xiao Jin looked at Han Xiao with a questioning look. Everyone's gaze followed. Black Phantom was the target of the framing, so his opinion was very important. Since the real culprit has been caught, the rest has nothing to do with me, Han Xiao said and turned to leave. The real culprit of Delot's assassination was found. The whole thing was Raylan's plan, and Han Xiao's suspicion was cleared. Su Dinghua died during the interrogation. Before he died, he revealed a lot of information. He was a very important chess piece of Raylan, and the assassination was to provoke a conflict between Overmera and the Darknet. However, the plan went wrong. Han Zhao's strength was beyond imagination. They originally thought that they could catch or kill Black Phantom, which would make it difficult for Overmera and the Darknet to reconcile. However, they didn't expect Han Xiao to turn the tables and take the initiative. The assassination went so smoothly because of the internal forces that Su Dinghua had set up over the years. Raylan suffered a great loss when he died. As the person who caught the real culprit, Xiao Jin's reputation soared. The home faction could only thank him. The matter came to an end, but Black Phantom, who was no longer involved, refused to leave. No one knew what his purpose was, but the factions didn't have time to care about him. They were all busy with the successor selection. In the room, Han Xiao looked at the mission real culprit on the interface. Su Dinghua was caught, but he didn't choose to complete the mission. This matter isn't over yet. A cold light flashed in Han Zhao's eyes, and a thought became clearer in his mind. On the third day after Su Dinghua was caught, Xiao Jin brought Xiao Hai to visit. Why are you looking for me? I should say, why are you staying? Xiao Jin asked. Han Xiao said calmly, I was framed for no reason, and your people wanted to kill me. I need compensation. Xiao Hai was furious. The whole thing was planned by Raylan. You killed our people, and you still have the face to ask for compensation? Raylan is too far away, so I came to ask for money first. This is robbery. Xiao Hai was furious. That's right. Han Xiao nodded calmly with a teasing look in his eyes. What can you do? Xiao Jin pulled the furious Xiao Hai and wrote a number on a piece of paper. I'll compensate you personally. Is this enough? Han Xiao glanced at it. Barely. Xiao Hai's face was sullen. He didn't understand why Xiao Jin was willing to pay. He didn't think it was necessary. You came to find me for something else, right? Han Xiao crossed his legs. Yes, I do. I have a request. Delot is dead, so the position of the head of the family is empty. Overmera is a big family, so it can't be without a leader. In 2 days, there will be an internal successor election. The election will be held by the higher-ups. Todd from the home faction, Sei Chi from the Red Island faction, and Angleton from a northern school are all strong competitors. When I was investigating the cause of Delot's death, they were secretly gathering the higher-ups to prepare for the election. They are at a disadvantage to me, so I hope you can help me. Xiao Jin said seriously. Why should I help you? Please help me this time, seeing that I've cleared your name. Han Xiao said faintly. You need to pay me if you ask me to help. Ungrateful. If it wasn't for father, you would still be the biggest suspect. Don't push your luck. Xiao Hai couldn't help but say angrily. Han Xiao glanced at him and said calmly, "You should be thanking me for not killing you. Otherwise, you would already be corpses." Xiao Hai's face was twisted with anger. He was trembling from Han Zhao's attitude. He could only look at Xiao Jin and hope that his father would do justice. However, he was destined to be disappointed. Xiao Jin was very calm from the beginning to the end. "How much do you want as a reward?" Han Xiao touched his chin and pointed at the piece of paper. "Triple this amount." Crazy? Xiao Hai was stunned. This request was simply too much. However, Xiao Jin didn't hesitate and compromised. "No problem." "Father." Xiao Hai was stunned. He didn't understand why Xiao Jin was so obedient to Han Xiao. He said hurriedly, "It's useless to ask him for help. Outsiders can't interfere with internal elections. No matter how strong he has no right to speak in internal meetings." Xiao Jin said faintly, "I have a way. Mr. Black Phantom, are you willing to join the Xiao faction?" "Join the Xiao faction? What did that mean?" Han Xiao raised his eyebrows and said with interest, "What do you mean?" "Join my family and become my relative. You'll be on the same level as me. My child will be your adopted child." The atmosphere suddenly became weird. Xiao Hai almost fell. He was confused. Xiao Jin didn't discuss this with him before. How did he get Godfather out of nowhere? F***CK, you can do that? Han Zhao's eyes twitched. Xiao Jin's shamelessness was out of his expectations. He couldn't help but ask, "Will such a childish method work?" Xiao Jin said faintly, "Politics has always been childish. As long as you join the Xiao faction, you'll be able to participate in internal meetings. Your strength is your right to speak. As long as you appear, it will be a threat. At that time, your identity will be a member of the Xiao faction, so it won't be considered a threat. The other factions will give up automatically." Showing off power to his own people and showing off power to an outsider was different. One was a threat from an outsider, which would only cause disgust. However, if he became one of his own people, it would mean that Xiao Jin's power would increase greatly. Furthermore, in the overall situation, he would be able to gather a powerful fighting force for Alamera, which was a huge contribution. Plus, with the power that Xiao Jin had accumulated over the years and the fame that he had gained from solving Daryl's assassination, the other factions would wisely give up. Until now, Han Xiao had a basic guess about the whole thing. He smiled and said, "Joining the Xiao faction has no benefits for me. Why should I agree? You join the Xiao faction, and when I become the leader, the power of Overmera will help you," Xiao Jin said. "It seems that for the position of leader, you are willing to pay any price." Han Xiao smiled and said in a mocking tone, "Okay, I will join the Xiao faction and reluctantly become the godfather of your child." Xiao Hai almost went crazy with anger. To recognize someone as his father, he had to give them benefits first. Only then would he be qualified to be someone else's godson. He had never been so sullen before. What was even more infuriating was that Xiao Jin actually agreed. He almost suspected that his father had been brainwashed. Han Xiao looked at Xiao Hai and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Come, let me hear you call me godfather." Xiao Hai's face turned green. He was a conceited person. Doing this would be worse than killing him. But when he saw Xiao Jin's stern eyes, he held back the anger in his heart and said through gritted teeth, "Godfather." Han Xiao picked his ears and pretended to say, "I didn't hear you clearly." "Godfather." Xiao Hai's cheeks puffed up. He used so much force that blood seeped out his gums. His mouth was filled with a metallic taste. "Hey, good boy." Han Xiaoxin did not know whether to laugh or cry. His original body was Xiao Hai's younger brother. When Xiao Hai knew the truth, he did not know what he would think. Xiao Jin's shamelessness also made him gasp in amazement. Xiao Jin reached out his hand. Then, to a happy cooperation, they shook hands. The father and son of the Xiao family stood up and left. They were silent all the way. Back at the Xiao faction mansion, Xiao Hai could not help but ask, "Father, why did you do this?" Xiao Jin was expressionless. "Black Phantom is greedier than I thought. I thought that by helping him clear his suspicion, he would be grateful, but I did not expect to have to pay such a high price to ask him to help. But it was worth it. At least we're the only ones who can negotiate with Black Phantom." The other factions will not be able to ask Black Phantom to help them. When I become the leader, these losses will be easily earned back. I see. As long as you become the leader, you will not have to care about Black Phantom. Xiao Hai understood. Xiao Jin suddenly turned to look at his son and said sternly, "You are wrong. After becoming the leader, you will have to fulfill the terms with Black Phantom and provide him with help. Burning the bridge after crossing the river is asking for death. This world follows the law of the jungle. Black Phantom's strength is already at the top. The deterrence of an individual's strength is as scary as the power of an organization. As long as Black Phantom is in the Xiao faction in name, he can be our backer, and the other factions will not dare to make a move. I know you are not comfortable, but don't let your emotions affect your decisions and ruin my plan." Xiao Hai was unwilling, but he could only grit his teeth and agree. Chapter 2:12. In the past 2 days, Xiao Jin had shown Han Xiao information about the activities of the other factions. He had also transferred the promised compensation and remuneration to his Darknet account, a total of 8 million aquamarine dollars. Han Zhao's current assets were very large, more than 40 million, which had increased by more than 10 times. He had plenty of money and could spend lavishly on machinery. He could start implementing some ideas, such as the robot army style that he had not dared to build because he thought it was too expensive. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. The internal meeting was held as scheduled in the Overmera meeting hall. The upper echelons of the various factions gathered in the hall, and security was tight. Han Xiao wore a hood and pretended to be an ordinary upper echelon of the Xiao faction when he entered the meeting hall. He did not attract any attention and found a seat. There was a large round table in the middle of the meeting hall. The leaders sat by the round table, while the other upper echelons sat in a circle around it. Those who belonged to different factions sat behind the leader. The factions were clearly divided into small areas from different angles. It was snowing outside, but there was heating in the meeting hall. Everyone took off their coats and whispered to each other. It was very noisy. Dong dong. Todd rang the bell on the table, and the meeting hall quickly quieted down. Then let the meeting begin. Todd's face was serious. There are 4 candidates for the successor of the first master. Me, second master Xiao, third master Sei Chi, and Mr. Angleton. When you are ready, you can vote. Then, before the vote, I would like to say something. Angleton stood up and spoke. It was a routine to make a declaration before the vote. Although most of the upper echelons had their own candidates, this procedure was still necessary. Soon, all 4 of them finished speaking. Todd looked around and said, "Then let the voting begin." The upper echelons announced their choices. Todd was nervous. He had been busy contacting the other upper echelons and promised them many benefits. During the meeting, it was basically decided that he would be chosen. According to the number of votes, he could beat the other candidates. However, he was soon stunned. Those upper echelons who had sworn to vote for him all voted for Sei Chi. They did not even look at him. How can this be? Todd was shocked and angry. Sei Chi's face was flushed with success. He frequently smiled and greeted the higher-ups who voted for him. Seeing that he had an absolute advantage in votes, he immediately felt relieved. When Dilat was assassinated, Sei Chi realized that the successor election was an opportunity. He secretly contacted Theseus, and Theseus agreed to help him get the position. For this, Sei Chi promised to give Theseus many benefits after he became the head of the family. Although Overmera was Theseus' partner, Theseus was very aggressive. He secretly wanted to take control of Overmera's forces, so he hooked up with Sei Chi, who was unwilling to submit to others. This time, Theseus used his connections and secretly roped in a large number of high-ranking officials to create an advantage for Sei Chi. As for Angleton from Northern School, he was basically just a bystander. Even the people from Northern School did not vote for him. He sat awkwardly in his seat, not knowing whether to sit or stand. Angleton was jointly elected by the Northern School to support the situation. He was not willing to give up the position of the head of the family, but he knew that he did not have a chance. He was very conflicted. Sei Chi's votes were in the lead, and as expected, his votes exceeded the majority. The dust settled. Thank you all for your support. I will not disappoint you all. Sei-Chi stood up. His face was glowing, and he could not hide his pride. At this time, Xiao Jin spoke. Wait. Everyone immediately looked over with different expressions. Xiao Jin was also a strong candidate, but he did not intervene until now. Everyone was curious about what his backup plan was. Second Master Xiao, do you have any objections? Sei-Chi's heart sank. He emphasized the words Second Master. Suddenly, an unforgettable voice came from the group of Xiao faction members. I have objections. Everyone's eyes widened, and their faces became fearful. They could tell that this voice belonged to Black Phantom. The Xiao faction people separated, revealing Han Xiao, who was hiding inside. At this time, Han Xiao was still dressed in a black trench coat and black gloves. He crossed his arms and said expressionlessly, I think Xiao Jin is more suitable for the position of the head of the family. Sei-Chi was stunned for a long time before he recovered. He said in disbelief, Xiao Jin, how dare you let an outsider intervene in the family's affairs? Are you trying to break the rules? Black Phantom is not an outsider. He is an elder of the Xiao faction. My child has already acknowledged him as his godfather. As soon as Xiao Jin finished speaking, the younger generation of the Xiao faction bowed to Han Xiao and called him godfather, as if they had rehearsed it. Everyone was stunned. So shameless. Todd's face twitched. According to Black Phantom's previous behavior, his attitude was very aloof. He did not care about the internal changes of the Overmera, but now he intervened. They thought about it again. When Black Phantom was suspected, only Xiao Jin spoke up for him. In the end, it was Xiao Jin who found the real culprit and cleared Black Phantom's name. At that time, the other factions were only focused on winning votes from the higher-ups. The various factions suddenly realized that maybe it was because of this incident that Xiao Jin connected with Black Phantom, and that was why Black Phantom was willing to help Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin must have put in a lot of effort to rope Black Phantom in as a relative of the Xiao faction. Although the various factions were not satisfied, they could not deny that Xiao Jin's actions had increased the overall strength of the Overmera. Black Phantom was a relative of the Overmera in name. Han Xiao sat down and scanned the entire room. His eyes were full of danger. The higher-ups all looked away, not daring to look at him. There was no need to say anything. Han Xiao, just sitting there, meant what he meant. A silent threat. The situation became awkward. The higher-ups who had voted were very uneasy and looked at each other quietly. Finally, one of the higher-ups could not help it. He wiped his sweat and said hesitantly, I thought about it carefully and felt that Xiao Jin is more suitable for the position of leader. I wonder if I can change my vote. According to the rules, they could not change their vote. However, Todd, who was hosting the meeting, cursed in his heart. Black Phantom was murderous at the side, so he did not dare to say no. He could only nod. After the first person, there was a second and a third. Han Zhao's eyes scanned the room slowly. Whoever he saw, he would change his vote immediately. It was as if his eyes contained magic. Sei-Chi was not satisfied. He wanted to fight for one last time, but Han Zhao's eyes turned to him. His eyes were like knives that pierced into his heart. A wave of fear exploded in his heart. Sei-Chi was so scared that he immediately shut his mouth and watched the position that should have belonged to him slip through his fingers. There was no suspense in the result. Xiao Jin won with an absolute majority of votes. The people of the Xiao faction were overjoyed. The other factions could only hold their noses and congratulate Xiao Jin one by one. The methods of the Xiao faction made the other factions very uncomfortable, but the result was not unacceptable. At least Xiao Jin was a veteran and had made a lot of contributions. Who would have thought that Xiao Jin would win in the end? Todd's heart was bleeding. The home faction had been in charge of the Overmera for so many years. Now, they had lost the power that they had always had and had their nest taken over. Todd knew that from today onwards, the home faction would gradually become a vassal faction. Seeing that the dust had settled, Han Xiao put on his coat and turned to leave. The crowd automatically made way. The higher-ups who were congratulating Xiao Jin also stopped and looked at Han Zhao's back. Although Xiao Jin was the final winner, in the eyes of the crowd, the main character of this meeting was the Black Phantom. He only showed his face once, and Xiao Jin's position was confirmed. This was the deterrence of overwhelming power. Chapter 2:13. The situation in Overmera had changed. Xiao Jin had become the head, and all the factions had sent their congratulations. All the important decision-making power had been transferred from the home faction to the Xiao faction. At night, Xiao Jin invited Han Xiao to his mansion. All the higher-ups of the Xiao faction had gathered together, including Xiao Hai and the other children. When they saw Han Xiao, they all bowed and called him adoptive father. No matter what the younger generation of the Xiao family thought, they could only maintain a respectful appearance on the surface. The housekeeper led Han Xiao to the study and closed the door. Only Xiao Jin and Han Xiao were left in the study. Xiao Jin had gotten his wish to become the head. Although he was still expressionless, one could see that he was in high spirits from his spirit. He didn't forget that this was a benefit that Han Xiao had brought him. Because Han Xiao had told him that he would leave tomorrow, Xiao Jin didn't rush to deal with the affairs on his first day as the head. Instead, he invited Han Xiao to express his gratitude. "I'm very grateful for your help." Xiao Jin's tone was sincere. Han Xiao didn't sit down. He stood in front of the bookcase and casually played with the small objects in the bookcase. He said casually, "If you have something to say, say it." Xiao Jin took out a bottle of wine and poured it into 2 cups. He stood up and walked to Han Xiao's side and handed him a cup. "Our deal remains unchanged. If you have any use for me, I will provide you with help." Xiao Jin revealed a smile and spoke with more confidence. The amber wine was fragrant, and the smell of the wine was soft and not pungent. The quality was very high. This was Xiao Jin's collection. He would only open it when he was facing important guests. It had been stored for many years, and it was only today that he could use it. Han Xiao took the cup, but didn't drink it. He only shook the cup and said lightly, "I thought about it carefully these days and found an interesting explanation. In fact, you knew that Su Dinghua would assassinate Dalat, but you didn't tell anyone. Instead, you allowed it to happen. When Dalat was dead, you had a chance to become the head. Then, when everyone was suspecting me, you were the only one who stood up for me. Because you knew who the murderer was, you took the opportunity to gain my favor. Then, when the other factions offended me, you found the right time to throw out the clue of Su Dinghua. You became the person who uncovered the real murderer, and your reputation increased greatly. At the same time, you connected with me. Then, logically, you used this as a reason to ask me to help you win the successor election. You used my deterrence to suppress all the factions. You weren't the real murderer. You were just the aureole who added fuel to the fire." Han Xiao turned his head with a meaningful look in his eyes. "What do you think of this explanation?" Xiao Jin laughed and shook his head. He took a sip of wine and said, "Interesting idea, but it's not like that. But I think it's like that." Han Xiao smiled faintly. Xiao Jin's expression changed slightly. "This is just your conjecture." Han Xiao walked toward Xiao Jin. He leaned his upper body forward and emitted an oppressive aura, forcing Xiao Jin to retreat and hit the edge of the table. The two of them were very close to each other. Xiao Jin couldn't avoid Han Xiao's gaze. He could only brace himself and look at him. From Han Xiao's eyes, he saw a dense, killing intent. Cold sweat immediately dripped down his back. "I don't need evidence. If I think you're the murderer, then you're the murderer." Han Xiao sneered. Xiao Jin's face was tense so that he didn't lose his composure. His heart gradually sank to the bottom. "Remember, you borrowed from me. I could take it back at any time." Han Xiao's finger heavily tapped Xiao Jin's chest twice. This action was full of provocation. Xiao Jin had used Black Phantom's deterrence to get to the top. Han Xiao could use the same method to deal with him at any time. Xiao Jin didn't doubt that the other factions would spend a lot of money to rope in Black Phantom. Furthermore, Black Phantom's strength could replicate the assassination. If they fell out, it was impossible for him to guard against a legendary killer day and night. Xiao Jin understood what Han Xiao meant. Threat, intimidation, extortion. Black Phantom was more ferocious than he remembered. Cooperating with Black Phantom this time was like asking a tiger for its skin. The atmosphere became more and more tense. When Xiao Jin was almost out of breath, Han Xiao took a few steps back and relaxed the atmosphere. He played with the wine glass and said lightly, "What are you going to do with Raylan?" Xiao Jin sighed. He knew that it was time for him to express his opinion. "I will make them pay. I will hunt down their intelligence personnel, attack the forces they support, and destroy their stronghold in the wilderness." Originally, Xiao Jin had just gotten to the top, so it was not suitable for him to start a large-scale war. His original intention was to use half a year to stabilize the internal situation. However, Han Zhao's pressure made him understand that he had no choice but to follow Han Zhao's wishes and take revenge on Raylan immediately. The damage to Overmera was no longer within the scope of his consideration. No matter how much his heart ached, he had to follow Han Zhao's wishes. "Very good." Han Xiao chuckled, turned around, and left, saying, "I hope you have a good time in your position as the head of the family." The wine glass was placed on the table. Han Xiao did not drink from the beginning to the end. Xiao Jin listened to the sound of the family members shouting "Godfather" outside the door until it disappeared. Only then did he sit down dejectedly. Han Zhao's threat had diluted the joy of becoming the head. "He caught my weakness." Xiao Jin smiled bitterly and called Xiao Hai in. "Father, Black Phantom is gone." Xiao Hai could not hide the joy on his face. He was happy that the head finally belonged to the Xiao faction. "Pass down my order. Let the foreign branches attack Raylan's forces in the wilderness." Xiao Jin returned to his expressionless face. Xiao Hai's smile froze. He said in disbelief, "Father, you just became the head, and the situation is not stable yet. If we start a war now, the family will lose a lot of power, and our position will become even more unstable. The most important thing now is to stabilize the internal situation. Even if Raylan set us up this time, we don't have to take revenge immediately. There will be plenty of time in the future. What you're doing is a life and death struggle. Stop talking. Do as I say," Xiao Jin said calmly. Xiao Hai froze. "You have activated the Overmera faction. Current relationship. Respected 3000/6000. Xiao faction's partner. Looks like Xiao Jin has compromised." Han Xiao was very satisfied. Threatening Xiao Jin was not something he did on a whim. The guess just now was another deduction that Han Xiao made based on the clues. First of all, Xiao Jin's actions were very purposeful. They were closely linked, and all of them gave him benefits, which made him suspicious. Second, the true murderer was a puzzle-solving mission, but Su Dinghua was directly found out by Xiao Jin. The mission was completed too easily, which made him feel that Xiao Jin already knew who the real murderer was. If Xiao Jin knew that Su Dinghua was going to assassinate him from the start and did not stop it, then Xiao Jin's role in the whole thing was not the real murderer or the mastermind, but a mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, taking the opportunity to seize the position of the head of the family. In fact, when Xiao Jin came to ask him for help, Han Xiao already had such a guess. However, he agreed to help, and at that time he had this plan. He also pretended to be confused and allowed Xiao Jin to use him to get the position. However, at the same time, Xiao Jin's position came from him, and he became dependent on him. Therefore, Han Xiao threatened Xiao Jin in turn. As long as Xiao Jin did not want to give up the position of the head of the family, then Xiao Jin would listen to him, almost becoming a puppet. According to Xiao Jin's performance, he was an ambitious person who knew how to judge the situation. The probability of him compromising was more than 80%, and he was not willing to give up the position of the head of the family that he had worked so hard to get. Raylan was the real murderer who framed him, so Han Xiao could not let them get away with it. Therefore, he ordered Overmera to fight them head-on, without caring about the consequences. Raylan's people would never have thought that Overmera's counterattack would be so fierce, completely deviating from their original intention, and became inviting trouble for themselves. This way, it was equivalent to Han Xiao taking revenge on Raylan without shedding a drop of blood, and he did not even have to do anything himself. Facing a large force, It was more convenient for him to use his own force to deal with it. During the entire incident in Overmera, Han Xiao watched from the sidelines, as if he was an outsider. He only showed his fangs at the last moment. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. When the snipe and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. Of course, it was also possible that his guess was wrong. Xiao Jin was actually not an insider who took advantage of the situation to act. However, this was not important at all. Just like what Han Xiao had said, I don't need evidence. If I think you're the culprit, then you're the culprit. Groundless. Xiao Jin had no other choice. He did not dare to admit it, so he could only bear with it. Mission complete. Han Xiao called out the interface. Please select the identity of the real culprit. Su Dinghua Raylan. Han Xiao described. The target of the mission was the mastermind who framed him, and the result was naturally Raylan. True culprit has been completed. Checking target met. Mission complete. You have received a chance to randomly choose a skill or a talent. Please select a talent or a skill. Han Xiao pondered. He felt that it would be better to choose a talent. He might have a chance to randomly choose a rare talent or even a molding talent. Talent. Randomizing. Randomization complete. Please select one from the following 3 talents. Duplicate chant. There's a 2% to 8% chance of double casting in one chant. Triggering chance depends on LUK. Call of the Wild. Initial affinity with beast-type monsters increases. There's a chance to communicate with beast-type monsters. CHA increases the chances. Chapter 214. Out of the 3 random talents, the most practical one was probably frost resistance. However, in terms of usage, Han Xiao felt that Call of the Wild had a wider range of uses. Beast-type monsters were a very large branch of monsters. In the entire galaxy, other than planets that were highly modified or barren, there were more or less beasts on other planets. Beasts were a very important part of the food chain. All kinds of beasts lived on land and in the ocean. Some strong races even lived directly in the universe. The scary radiation, particle streams, psionic dust, and psychic currents could not hurt them. These kinds of races were bosses that would only appear many versions later. As for duplicate chant, it was a mage talent. Casting and chanting were magic skills, so it was useless for a mechanic like him. The double casting effect would not be applied to skills other than magic. If it was not randomly given, Han Xiao would not have come into contact with talents of other elements. After thinking about it, Han Xiao finally chose Call of the Wild. Although his charisma was a little low, this talent was quite useful. Blue Star in version 2. 0 was the world of monsters. Han Xiao had a feeling that Call of the Wild would come in handy. His plan was to leave Blue Star before version 1. 0 ended. However, he had a guess. The main storyline of version 2. 0 was called Mutation Disaster. This was a mutated virus from the universe that caused the mutation of many creatures on many planets. Blue Star was one of them. The antidote was developed by an advanced civilization. Han Xiao thought that he might be able to return with the antidote in the future and in the storyline of Blue Star early. After the large-scale dissemination of information about the germinal organization before the open beta, Han Xiao knew that he could gain a lot of benefits by greatly influencing the main storyline. This was just a blueprint for the future. Han Xiao still focused on the matter in front of him. The incident in Overmera had ended, and the final result was quite satisfactory. Not only did he not lose out, but he also gained a lot of benefits. Although he stayed in Overmera for a few more days and delayed his journey, who would complain about having more side quests? The more side quests there were, the more benefits there were. After all, the players were there, diligent and conscientious. They did not cry, make a fuss, or commit suicide. The next morning, Han Xiao left Overmera, and all the higher-ups came to see him off. The coldness of the north seemed to have seeped into the hearts of the Overmera's higher-ups, and they all wrapped up their animal fur coats tightly. Black Phantom had become one of them in name, and this outsider had become the strongest combat power in the family. The upper echelons were willing to curry favor with him, and they even gave Han Xiao an off-road vehicle as a means of transportation. The people of the Xiao faction were all present. They were courteous and respectful, and they purposely appeared close to Xiao Jin. The people of the Xiao faction were full of disdain and envy. If they could get Black Phantom support, they would be willing to do the same. They all lamented that Xiao Jin had stolen the opportunity. Xiao Jin, on the other hand, was feeling very complicated at this time. He exchanged a glance with Han Xiao and nodded slightly. Only the two of them knew the deal behind the scenes. Although the result was as he wished, Xiao Jin felt somewhat bitter in his heart. Han Xiao waved his hand, not bothering to exchange pleasantries with them. He drove the off-road vehicle through the wind and snow, leaving a trail of dust behind him. He's finally gone. The upper echelons of Overmera finally relaxed their tense bodies. They felt like a huge rock had finally been removed from their chest, and even their breathing was much smoother. Not far away, the players of the Bamboo Rain Guild cheered. Their mission had finally been completed. Black Phantom has uncovered the real culprit and caused a huge change to the situation of Overmera. As his helper, you witnessed everything that happened. Additional reward, 15,000 EXP. The EXP from this mission was very generous for the current players, and the Bamboo Rain Guild was very satisfied. All right, Xian, didn't you record Black Phantom's material? The guild leader, Bamboo Rain Fragrance, asked. I already sold it. I sent it to Galaxy Times, and they gave me a reward. Bamboo Rain Xian said proudly. Mecha, the romance of men. The background of Galaxy had always made many players speculate about the various combat systems. Mechas were a very popular topic, and there were many books about mechas that had countless fans. A large number of players dreamed of the day when they could fight in a mecha. Among the 5 main classes, only the mechanic class fit the speculations. However, since the open beta, there had never been an NPC who fought in a mecha. Han Xiao was the first person to show off a mecha, and he had unintentionally created a new first. The impact on the players would only appear after the new issue of Galaxy Times was broadcasted, and before that, the local forces reacted first. When killing Lun and Vanessa, Han Xiao had used a mecha, and it had been recorded by the people of Overmera. It had been leaked onto the dark web, and it had caused a huge commotion among the various forces. Everyone could see that the modified Viper was very powerful, and it was a very mature mecha. Black Phantom was a mechanic. It was no doubt that he had created it himself. Its level was much higher than the experimental products of some large countries in the military laboratories. Han Xiao had made a name for himself as an assassin, but now he had used his mechanic identity to shock the various forces again. These forces quickly refreshed his profile. At the same time, there were many forces that were eyeing his mecha. The German organization was one of them. This is a mature, single combat suit. If we can control it, the strength of our soldiers will increase tremendously, and we will have a much higher chance of winning this war. In the headquarters of Andrea, the leader and Cyberlos were watching the short battle video on the big screen. Cyberlos' eyes were shining with passion. The leader thought of something else. The person who used our name to do things in the Lewis Research Institution incident was Black Phantom, and it was this mecha. Black Phantom also interfered in the evacuation battle in the southern continent. He sees us as an enemy, not to be messed with. The leader frowned. His mecha is very important to us. Unfortunately, we don't have enough combat power in other continents. Plus, his whereabouts are unpredictable, and he is very difficult to deal with. Unless the top executive of the organization makes a move, no one is his match. The leader did not want to give up Black Phantom's mecha so easily, but his rationality told him that when the war started, he would not have a chance to deal with Black Phantom, unless Black Phantom came to the battlefield. The chances were slim. The leader shook his head. 2 days later, Han Xiao found a Darknet stronghold in the northern continent and accepted the bounty mission for Hidden Demon. After the notification on the interface, he handed over the Hidden Demon. What was interesting was that the person in charge of the stronghold was very confused. Your Excellency, Black Phantom, where is the Hidden Demon you were talking about? Han Xiao pointed at an empty space under his feet. Right here. The person in charge wiped his cold sweat. I can't see. Han Xiao used more than 10 torture methods to prove the existence of the hidden demon. After the hidden demon was accepted, the bounty mission was completed. 200,000 EXP and 150,000 aquamarine dollars. He earned a lot of money from using the hidden demon. Although Han Xiao had a lot of assets, he would not miss any opportunity to earn money. Even the smallest mosquito was still meat. The highest level player on the level leaderboard had reached level 20 and was stuck on the advancement mission. At this time, Han Xiao also came to the last novice village in the northern continent and made it in time for the last wave of EXP. In this place, Han Xiao realized that he was even more popular, especially the male players. They surrounded him like a sea of women. What's the name of your mecha? Are you selling the mecha? This was the most common question. Han Xiao glanced at the forum and saw that the Galaxy Times had released a video of him wearing the mecha. This issue of Galaxy Times was rather dull, but this video became the highlight. The originally sparse comments exploded like a geyser, covering the entire screen. It perfectly explained what it meant to be a sea of people. No wonder the players are so excited. Han Xiao could understand. If he was still a newbie, he would also be envious of the mecha. The most direct effect was that the players' passion for the mechanic class had increased again. More people came to this novice village to change their class, which increased his sales. The official platform would release all kinds of statistics after the open beta. Han Xiao was looking forward to seeing the ratio of players of the 5 main classes. In his previous life, the ratio of mechanic class players was in the single digits. Under the influence of this butterfly, the number of players this time would be at least double. The more mechanic class players there were, the brighter Han Xiao's future prospects would be. Beep beep. His phone suddenly rang. Han Xiao looked at his phone. It was a message from Hao Tian. He had completed the mission. He was the first player to complete the new era Origin Split mission. Not bad, as expected of a god-level player. Han Xiao's eyes sparkled. He had not left the northern continent, but Hao Tian had completed the mission. One had to know that those guys in the western continent who had accepted the mission long ago had not completed it yet. Chapter 215. In the era of virtual online games, interactive experiences were very important. Players all thought that Galaxy had done a very good job in this aspect. Communication with NPCs was very free, and players could write messages and emails as they wished. Players could use this method to communicate with NPCs remotely. In the current era, the popular games all had certain elements of reality. They had the function of virtual social networking. The old game Tyrannical was very good at this aspect. Even if it was in standalone mode, it could still write text messages at will. Speaking of which, there was an interesting story. Ever since the advent of gaming cabin technology, Stone followed the trend of the times and ported Rampaging Tyrant to the gaming cabin. At that time, due to the authenticity of the virtual gaming technology and the rough gameplay of Rampaging Tyrant, it even caused a moral debate. The legendary NPC Protection Association was really established. It was a pain in the ass, and it was very strange. The end of the life of the living completed. Of the 5 requirements of the hidden main mission, one of them turned green, indicating that it had been completed. You have received Suli 485 file. From the file, you have learned about the past. This mission even has a voiceover. What a joke. Han Xiao was surprised. The files recorded a long-ago action plan. Many details are missing. Before the Old Era War, a country that had already perished sent a field team to a small town in the Andrea continent to carry out a secret mission. The process is unknown, but the result was that all the residents of the town were killed. That's it. Han Xiao scratched his head. This description was a quest clue, but it was too confusing. After thinking about it, he forwarded the content to Hannes. That old man had more clues, so he might be able to find something else. All Han Xiao wanted was to complete the mission. Hao Tian stood beside the mission character named Old Devon and stared at his phone, waiting for Black Phantom's reply. This mission was very tedious. Old Devon had kept the file, and the first thing to do was to gain Old Devon's trust and complete many errands. The difficult part was that old Devon was a patient with a mental disorder. He had persecutory delusions, amnesia, split personality, irritable temper, nonsense, and more than a dozen other mental disorders. He was very prone to over-anxiety. When he saw a trash can on the street, he would think that it was a bomb. When he saw a passerby, he would think that the passers-by were his enemies. Old Devon had once participated in this plan. According to him, after completing the mission, he was hunted down by the country to silence him. He had been hiding from place to place, living in a state of constant anxiety all year round. He had become paranoid and suffered from various mental illnesses. Do you know why wars broke out in the old era? While chatting, old Devon would often look around carefully. After confirming that no one was around, he said nervously, "It's because of me that they are all hunting me down. Every country wants to find me, so they started fighting. There are enemies everywhere. Even now, they haven't given up. Do you see those surveillance cameras in the city? They were all set up to find me." Of course, Hao Tian did not understand a single word that was said. At the same time, he did not care about the storyline. He just focused on completing the mission. With his high efficiency and strong kidney power, he finally completed the mission. Han Zhao's confirmation came from his phone. Hao Tian received the notification that the mission was completed, and he was relieved. "You are the first person to complete the mission. I think you have a lot of potential. Are you interested in helping me?" "Sure," Hao Tian replied simply. "You go to the Raylan border and wait there. Coordinates are 1565, 842. I will bring you along when I leave the northern continent." Okay. Thinking about the various benefits of Black Phantom's hidden storyline that were circulating on the forums, even Hao Tian, who had a calmer personality, felt a little excited. After visiting all the novice villages in the northern continent, Han Zhao's trip to the novice villages finally came to an end. Before leaving the northern continent, Han Zhao went to an ice field where high-level snow bears were active. He spent a few hours and used the Ghost sniper rifle to farm the talent, Lethal Shot. Lethal Shot. The first shot attack to the target has a 2 to 5% chance of causing true damage. Will not be effective for the same target for 5 minutes. By changing the target, he could continuously try to trigger the effect of the talent. The effect was more practical. Although it was not as good as Bennett's legendary battle technique, molding ability, it was still a rare attack-type talent. After counting, he had a total of 12 talents. This number was very outstanding in version 1.0. If it was an LV55 player, it would be more than half of Han Zhao's talents. Han Zhao also tried the newly acquired talent Call of the Wild. The LV50 plus snow bears were not affected at all. They were as fierce as they could be. He changed to a lower level target and found that a bear cub was very close to him. It was white, chubby, and furry. Its height was only up to his waist, and it hugged his leg and shook it like a spoiled child. This talent is still a bit useful. The bear cub is only LV20. Call of the Wild should have some hidden elements. Other than being affected by charm, the level difference between me and the beast is also the reason. It should also have something to do with the beast's habits. Han Zhao muttered to himself. Suddenly, he saw this furry ball hugging his leg and trying to climb up, treating him like a tree. Han Technician squinted and kicked the bear cub away. The white and chubby bear cub rolled a few times before hugging him again. It was very clingy and could not be chased away. His furry buttocks shook, and his appearance was stupid. His pair of small black eyes were simple and honest. "Tisk, so cute." Han Zhao was touched by the cuteness. He lifted the bears but then looked at it. "Oh, it's a female." The man and the bear stared at each other for a long time. Han Zhao stretched out his arm, and the bear cub moved its butt with difficulty and climbed onto Han Zhao's shoulder to play on the swing. "You must have koala blood. I didn't expect you to be a mixed blood." Han Zhao was amazed. He twisted his neck, and the bear cub also swayed. It felt like he had an extra backpack. "Let's take it back and raise it as a pet," Han Zhao said to himself. Raising pets was the fun of life. With one more pet, Han Zhao suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. No wonder people in big cities like to raise animals. It was simply a stress reliever. When they were unhappy, They could bully their pets and regain their sense of superiority as an intelligent species. This was a claw ice bear cub. It was only a few months old. Han Xiao was too lazy to name it. He just called it Bear Cub. With Bear Cub, he took a plane to the border of Raylan to pick up Hao Tian and immediately set off back to southern continent. On the plane, Hao Tian was very quiet. He did not ask where they were going, nor did he take the initiative to interact with them. Han Xiao saw that he had nothing to do, so he gave him the task of taking care of Bear Cub. Hao Tian's expression became very interesting on the spot. He simply showed all the chaos in his heart on his face. Because every detail in Galaxy was very real, especially the appearance and smell of feces and urine. It only took half a day to fly from northern continent to southern continent. Han Xiao received a call from Hannes on the way, saying that old Devon's file had added to their clues. This was a key clue, and Han Xiao knew that it would affect the hidden main plot of the next round. The gains in the northern continent were no less than those in the western continent. His experience and assets had increased greatly, almost doubled. Every time Han Xiao saw the accumulated experience on the panel and the total assets in his Darknet account, he felt full of happiness. It was like a washing machine turning over mountains and seas in his heart. The plane landed in southern continent. Antonio had been waiting for a long time. As soon as he got off the plane, Han Xiao saw his rough face. "My friend, welcome back alive." Antonio laughed and gave Han Xiao a bear hug. The strong smell on his body almost made Han Xiao bleed. "I'll die if you hug me for a while more." Han Xiao frowned and rubbed his nose. The smell did not go away for a long time and went straight into his skull. "You've only been out for less than a month, and look at what you've done." Antonio was amazed. He still remembered that Han Xiao said that he would not be reckless. It seemed that compared to him, Han Xiao's standard of not being reckless was the difference between a mountain and a basin. During this time, Black Phantom's deeds were spread out like a deep water bomb. Many forces had no choice but to retract part of their attention from the war and focus on Black Phantom. If there were no accidents, Black Phantom had become one of the top threats in most forces' files. Black Phantom had officially reached the top of the Darknet's assassin list, pushing all the other assassins down. After chatting for a while, Antonio saw Bear Cub. His eyes lit up, and he ran over to rub it. From the appearance, Han Xiao was not surprised that Antonio liked furry things. These two balls of fur were probably close relatives. Walking aside, Han Xiao dialed Bennett's number. "I'm back." Bennett let out a sigh of relief. With a bit of bitterness, he said, "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Han Xiao went straight to the point. "The sanctuary plan you mentioned last time, what do you need me to help with?" Bennett was very touched. Han Xiao's first thought when he came back was to ask for help. What was this called? This was really a kind-hearted and timely help. Nowadays, the moral of the world was deteriorating day by day. People who cared so much about relationships were almost extinct. This was a friend worth making. Bennett decided to let Black Phantom be one of the main executors of the plan and reveal the details. So he said, "Let's talk when we meet. I have a very important mission for you." Hearing that, Han Xiao knew that there was hope. He was secretly excited. He was very familiar with the main storyline of the sanctuary plan and knew how great the benefits of being a core participant were. Recently, the undercurrents of the Six Nations were surging. The preparation for the expedition war was about to be completed, and it was estimated that the expedition would be officially launched within this month. The enemy, the Germinal organization, was finally going to face the catastrophe that Han Xiao had single-handedly created. The flames of war were about to spread to Blue Star. Everywhere in the world, wanderers, warlords, financial groups, secret organizations, and so on were very nervous. Starting the main storyline of the Sanctuary Plan at this juncture completely messed up the order of the storyline, but the benefits were obvious. Under the threat of war, Bennett would invest resources to carry out the plan regardless of the cost. Chapter 216. Bennett's invitation represented his trust. The location of the gathering this time was the first fallout shelter that the Darknet was building. The chosen location was the ruins of a city called Abandoned City of Rhoda. It was once the financial center of a destroyed country in the southern continent. It was located in a flat wasteland in the inland of the southern continent. Han Xiao sat in the special helicopter sent by Bennett. When he looked down at the city from the sky, the construction scene of the fallout shelter jumped into his eyes. The first thing he saw was a huge wall barrier that was being built. It was dozens of meters tall, and there were workers welding steel bars on the scaffolding in the unfinished area. The concrete of the wall was mixed with other materials. It had a metallic luster and was very defensive. With Han Zhao's professional eyes, he could see that the small rocket launchers would at most leave a burn mark on the wall. The wall was completely built according to the standards of a fortress, and the cost was extremely high. A huge Darknet logo was painted on the wall with red paint, as well as the new name of the city, Bennett's Fallout Shelter No. 1. The helicopter flew over the wall and saw all kinds of construction machines in the city rumbling in operation, cleaning the roads and abandoned buildings. Countless workers in gray overalls were busy like ants, laying the foundations for new buildings and planning the layout of the city. Piles of building materials were piled up in the open. There were steel bars, bricks, wood, and all kinds of industrial building materials. It was like a super large construction site. The Fallout Shelter actually uses its own name. Han Xiao patted Bennett's shoulder and sighed. I didn't expect you to be an old B****starred. Bennett slapped the hand on his shoulder away and turned his head. Let's go. Follow me to the meeting of the upper management. Han Xiao was surprised. What does the meeting have to do with me? Bennett shook his head and laughed. You're also one of the upper management. Han Xiao blinked. Bennett covered his mouth and coughed. I can guarantee that you'll become a member of the upper management. You won't disappoint me, right? The Darknet had recently restructured the upper management. The top management was the group of founders, and Bennett was one of them. Below them were the various upper management members. What are you saying? Han Xiao said with a serious expression. When have I not disappointed you? Bennett did not know whether to laugh or cry as he led the way. Han Xiao also saw the construction of the shelter up close. I have invested a lot of resources, and the progress is pretty good. I expect to be able to build the prototype within a year. The layout of the shelter is divided into a few aspects: living measures, defense measures, and resource measures. There must be enough infrastructure to meet the basic needs of the residents, and we also need to plant livestock for our own production and use to form an internal ecological system. Even if a war breaks out in the outside world, the shelter will be able to sustain itself. The final defense measure is naturally to fend off all kinds of enemies. Boom! In front of them, there was an abandoned building that was being demolished. The collapse raised a cloud of dust. Han Xiao brushed away the dust on his face and clicked his tongue. Just this shelter alone cost you a fortune. The resources of the 6 nations can only support the construction of 2 or 3 shelters, Bennett said with his hands behind his back. My plan is to build at least 3 to 5 shelters in each continent. That's a sky-high price. If we can preserve the spark of our civilization, this wealth is not worth mentioning. Han Xiao exclaimed, Wow, I think I see holy light coming out of the back of your head. Bennett's mouth twitched. Along the way to the brand new fortress, the upper echelons of the Darknet were all gathered in the conference hall. As soon as Bennett and Han Xiao entered, about a dozen people stood up and bowed slightly to show respect, nodding at him. Black Phantom had shown his strength, and he was now one of the top forces in the Darknet. With Bennett's guarantee, the upper management here all acknowledged Han Zhao's position as equal. The upper management reported the construction progress of Shelter 1 by 1. After Bennett finished, he said, Shelter 1 has been proven to be feasible. The news has been released, and many wanderers have come here, hoping to be protected. With residents joining, the construction speed can be increased, and they will be provided with work opportunities. Personally, participating in the construction of the shelter will help to build a cohesive force. In the next few months, as the news of the shelter spreads further, more wanderers will come. The construction of the shelter should be done sooner rather than later. I've decided to start the construction of Shelter 2 and 3 immediately. The upper management looked at each other, and someone asked hesitantly, "Mr. Bennett, isn't this too rushed? Why don't we wait for Shelter 1 to be completed?" "Because we don't have much time. We have to speed up. There must be a person in charge of each shelter. Who will be in charge of Shelter 2? Senna will be in charge of Shelter 2, Bennett said. Senna was the current chief director of the Darknet, and she was unanimously elected as the spokesperson by a group of old directors. Of course, no one objected to this decision. Black Phantom will be in charge of Shelter 3. Han Shao raised his eyebrows. He did not expect Bennett to trust him so much and directly let him be in charge of an entire shelter. The scope of power was very large. The upper management was in an uproar. Black Phantom had just been promoted to the upper management, but he was already in charge of such an important matter. His qualifications were not good enough. Many of the directors wanted to refute, but Bennett had seen through their thoughts long ago. One sentence from him made them speechless. Shelters need extremely strong combat power to be in charge. If you're confident that your subordinates are stronger than Black Phantom, then stand up and object. Stronger than Black Phantom? The directors smiled bitterly. In the entire Darknet, other than Bennett and two other retired old men, no one could beat this new Black Phantom. Since no one objected, Bennett announced the end of the meeting. At the same time, he pulled Han Shao to a private meeting room and exchanged a few words. Then, Bennett made a prompt decision to stop arguing with Han Shao about whether he should be paid for being the person in charge. He pulled the topic back on track, and under Han Zhao's disdainful gaze, he showed the detailed plan of Shelter 3 without blushing. The construction team of Shelter 3 has basically been formed, and the location will be gray metal ruins. Han Shao felt that the name sounded familiar. He suddenly remembered that his secret base was in gray metal ruins. What a coincidence! Bennett explained the general direction. Han Zhao's mission was to be in charge of the site and supervise the construction team. If there were any threats nearby, he had full authority to deal with them. There was only one requirement, and that was to build the shelter well. After listening to a long and boring introduction, Han Shao was so bored that he almost dozed off. Then, a notification appeared on the interface, and he woke up with a start. You have activated a new faction Darknet organization. Affiliation Blood Pact Society detected. Relationship respected 4450/6000. Number 1 assassin leaderboard. Darknet organization initial relationship. Friendly 2225/3000. Upper management. Joining the upper management of the Darknet was because of his personal relationship with Bennett. If a player wanted to have a high voice in the Darknet organization, they would have to at least be respected. If they wanted to become an upper management, they would have to at least be revered. You have triggered the grade, a main mission, Shelter Plan, Shelter 3. Seeing the mission requirement, Han Shao smiled. Just as he had guessed, becoming the person in charge of Shelter 3 was a construction mission. The type of mission was also a series of missions. It was divided into dozens of requirements, and the construction blueprint was divided into many parts. Every time a part of the construction was completed, it would be considered as completing one of the requirements. The requirements included defense measures, residential housing, infrastructure, construction, cleaning up the ruins, reclamation, farming, and so on. It was equivalent to transforming a city. The mission notification said that if there were any unexpected situations, he would have to be responsible for dealing with them, and his rating would be increased or decreased accordingly. The more requirements he completed, the higher his rating would be, and the final reward would be based on his rating. The players did this main mission through the normal way, but the situation was completely different. The players had to receive different missions from the bottom level or middle level characters, and they had to participate in the construction of the main mission through different side missions. What Han Shao received was the overall mission that combined all the side missions into one. This was the benefit of being a core participant. It was extremely convenient to be in charge of the overall situation, and he knew what he had to do clearly. His rewards were also incomparable to the other players. The scattered missions that the players did would all be included in his supervision of the construction of a shelter, indirectly completing his requirements. As mentioned before, even if it was the same mission, it would vary from person to person. Han Xiao received this mission with many benefits through his special connections on the darknet. But there are some problems. Bennett coughed and said, because of the lack of funds, the resources are all concentrated in Shelter 1 and Shelter 2, so there might be fewer people following you to build Shelter 3. How many? Han Xiao suddenly had a bad feeling. There were tens of thousands of workers in Shelter 1, so it should not be too few. About 1,000. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and had a "Are you kidding me?" look on his face. Bennett was embarrassed. The main problem is that the liquidity is not in place. You only have this amount of people in the first month. We will hire more people to help you later. Han Xiao picked up Cub Bear, who was sleeping on his lap, and threw it at Bennett. Cub Bear fell onto the sofa with its 4 legs in the air. It opened its eyes in a daze. Hit him, Han Xiao pointed. Bear Cub blinked in confusion and stared at his finger for a long time before understanding. It turned around and sat down, slapping Bennett on the left side of his face. Bennett smiled bitterly, rubbed Bear Cub's furry butt, and pushed it aside. I know it's difficult, but I can only trouble you. No one else has this ability. Han Xiao pondered for a while, rolled his eyes, and nodded. Don't worry, in a month, I will be able to build a prototype similar to your shelter. Bennett had very low requirements for Shelter 3. As long as it could stabilize and complete the cleaning of the ruins within a month, it would be enough. He felt that Han Xiao was just talking nonsense, so he did not take it to heart. Right, I have one more request, Han Xiao said. What? Han Xiao laughed. Shelter 3 needs to use my name. Chapter 217. Black Phantom was in charge of Sanctuary 3, and some of the directors were unhappy about it. However, when they heard that Sanctuary 3 was understaffed and that Han Xiao had actually gotten a tough job, they felt much better. That was more like it. It was only fair for them to let a newbie do the hard work. However, Bennett found the directors and announced an appointment. Black Phantom is my friend. He doesn't have much experience. Everyone here participated in the construction of Sanctuary 1, so I will send one of the directors to go with Black Phantom and be his advisor and assistant. The directors panicked and looked at each other secretly, hoping that it would not be them. Going to Sanctuary 3 was like being sent to the border, and they would not be able to do anything for a month. Furthermore, there was no benefit in being Black Phantom's assistant, and there was little merit in being under someone else. This job was terrible, so they might as well stay and wait for other appointments. Although Bennett's sanctuary plan had a great intention, the directors below him did not have the same awareness as him. Instead, they saw a lot of benefits from the sanctuary plan and felt that this was a new round of power distribution. If they could become the person in charge of a sanctuary, they would definitely have more power in the future. Bennett was well aware of the thoughts of these upper echelons, but he did not explain at all. That was because benefits would motivate the directors, and he could not expect everyone to be noble. This was within Bennett's calculations. There were not many people that could enter Bennett's eyes, and Han Xiao was one of them. This guy was such a good friend, and he came purely to help. Occasionally, he would ask for a reward, but most of the time, it was just a joke, and he did not insist on a reward. Bennett was not a person who valued benefits, and he found that Han Xiao had similar qualities. He felt that he had found a comrade, so naturally, they were very close. This time, he decided to find a capable assistant for Han Xiao. After a glance, Bennett said, Huang Yu, you go and help Black Phantom. This director named Huang Yu's face immediately fell. He reluctantly nodded. Seeing the other directors gloating, he felt very unhappy. Among the directors of the Darknet, Huang Yu was a very capable member. He was good at handling all kinds of trivial matters, and he had always been in an important position. However, this time, he was sent to be Bennett's assistant. Huang Yu was not happy, and he was unwilling, so he would not take it seriously. He had already decided that he would just deal with Black Phantom casually and pass the month as a vacation for himself. The idea of shelters had also been thought of by others during the wars of the old era. At that time, the country was busy with war, and many people were homeless. Thus, a private group set out to build shelters, sparing no expense to save the war refugees. At first, they succeeded, sheltering tens of thousands of people. However, due to the lack of resources, the amount of food given to the refugees was gradually limited, which made many of the refugees unhappy. Humans were insatiable animals, especially in the tense atmosphere of war. Any trace of evil would be infinitely magnified. It was easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. They had forgotten who had helped them when they were hungry and cold. In the end, they rebelled, took over the shelter, killed the original owner, and took over the shelter. In that chaotic situation, the story of the farmer and the snake was very common. It was not that shelters were not good, but the old era did not allow it. Coincidentally, the person who had built the shelter in the old era was Bennett's friend. Bennett had never given up on this idea, and now he felt that it was time. Han Xiao was familiar with the storyline. He knew that Bennett's shelter plan was successful, and it gradually snowballed. Even the people in the city were willing to live in the shelter, and it almost had the trend of establishing a country. This caused the Six Nations to be vigilant. If it was not for the mutation disaster in version 2.0, the shelter would have been the enemy of the Six Nations. The real use of the shelter was in version 2.0, and it was only then that it truly lived up to its name. I'm now the person in charge of Shelter 3. This is a real large-scale main storyline. I don't have enough manpower, but I still have the players. Han Xiao already had an idea on how to complete this shelter mission. A helicopter landed in Shelter 1, and Mad Blade, Angry Sword, and Port Bun Hit Dog got off the helicopter. They looked around curiously, and when they saw Han Xiao, they were immediately overjoyed and jogged over. Mad Blade Angry Sword had a lot of questions he wanted to ask, but when he saw how Tion standing at the side, he swallowed all his words and said in shock, "Great God, how Tion?" How Ian glanced at him coldly and did not bother to say a word. "Wow, great God." Port Bun Hit Dog's eyes widened. "You also triggered the hidden storyline?" How Tion turned around and did not answer. The great God is so cold. Poor Bun Hit Dog was speechless. As expected, Mad Blade Angry Sword was better. At this time, Bear Cub, who was circling Han Xiao, suddenly barked twice. How Tion took a step forward, as quiet as a virgin and as agile as a rabbit. He picked up Bear Cub and took out a tissue from his bag with a serious face. The two of them suddenly understood why How Tion did not want to speak. They quietly took a few steps back. The smell was pungent. Seeing How Tion's emotionless expression and professional actions, Mad Blade was in awe. As expected of a great god, your expression did not change at all. It was the first time the players met, and Han Xiao felt that it was very harmonious. He looked at Port Bun Hit Dog. He could use this reporter for the next thing. 3 days later, congratulations to player White Mask for completing his first advancement. All the players received a notification on the interface. The first player on the level ranking board had reached level 21. White Mask was a forum player, and he shared the changes of the advancement on the forum. The Blue Star players were shocked to find that the advancement had automatically awakened the energy training technique. At first, everyone had doubts, but as more and more people advanced, it was confirmed that this skill was a skill that everyone would definitely awaken. The Blue Star players were confused. The skill that they had spent EXP to learn was actually a skill that was automatically learned after the advancement. Was it a loss? Many players did not think so. Learning an advanced skill in advance did not seem to be a bad thing. After all, this was a growth skill, and the effect was very good. At low levels, it could greatly increase one's combat power. It was still very useful for players like them. The real losers were the players from the North Continent who had only learned it at level 18 or 19. They were about to advance, but they had spent a lot of money and lost everything. They wanted to cry, but had no tears. The players from the South Continent who had been depressed for a long time suddenly realized that they were not the unluckiest ones. They immediately became energetic. Although they knew the truth about the energy training technique, many low-level players felt that learning the skill in advance was worth it. Therefore, many players from Andrea were still waiting for Han Zhao's arrival. But what they waited for was a bolt from the blue. Black Phantom had returned to the South Continent. He was not coming to Andrea. When Han Zhao went to the North Continent and the West Continent, the players from Andrea were full of hope that they would be the last to arrive, but the truth was too cruel. Han Zhao was not coming at all. The hope in their hearts was dashed, and the contrast made the players from Andrea break down. The discussion on the Blue Star Forum was in full swing, and even foreign players from other novice planets joined in. Andrea was completely a bystander this time. They felt that no one was bringing them along to play, and the sadness was like a lonely and bleak wind blowing in their hearts. The public beta had been open for almost 2 months, and the average level of the earliest batch of players was close to level 20. More and more new players were entering the game, and the total number of Blue Star players was in the hundreds of thousands, and it was still rising. The high-level players started to get involved in the story of the various planets, digging into the history and environment of the world to participate in the main storyline. It was the same for Blue Star. More and more players were recruited by the Six Nations as special forces. From the NPCs, the players found out that the Six Nations expedition against the Germinal organization was about to begin. However, the interface showed that their level had not reached the prerequisite to activate the expedition mission, which meant that even if they followed the troops to participate in the expedition, most of them would not get the mission reward. Most importantly, the players would be slaughtered effortlessly if they went up against an army with their current strength. This was naturally the effect of Han Zhao bringing the main storyline forward. The players lost the transition period and directly participated in the war. It was worth mentioning that the various organizations in Blue Star finally realized that there was a limit to the number of times the players could revive. This made those organizations feel relieved, and they felt that the Inhumans finally had a weakness. They were not as nervous as before and started to treat the Inhumans as special mercenaries. Chapter 218. Wild Boy, a member of Sky Territory and a loyal fan of pork bun. There were many Galaxy video hosts with different styles on the forum, but only Pork Bun had first-hand information about Black Phantom, so he was always ahead of the other video hosts. Wild Boy liked to watch videos related to Black Phantom very much. He was fascinated by the dark and mysterious aura of Black Phantom. Once Pork Bun updated, Wild Boy saw it. He clicked on it immediately and posted a comment before watching it. International practice. Rush for updates before watching. The video started playing, and Pork Bun's despicable voice sounded. Snow white legs and cherry lips, peeling skin and breaking bones to suck human marrow. Take off those clothes and pants. Wine doesn't make people drunk, just a cup of aphrodisiac, in exchange for a night without sagging. All right, welcome to Galaxy Adventure Diary. Dog viewers, I'm still me, a different Pork Bun. Wild Boy spat out a mouthful of water. It was the usual opening poem in every episode, and the lyrics were getting more and more flirtatious. Even with a strong ID, he felt that his body could not take it anymore. Every time the opening poem was released, the comments would go crazy, so dense that even the screen could not be seen clearly. I used to be a civil and military strategist, but now I only know how to shout 666. The theme is clear, so wet, so wet. I'm calling the police. I'm a girl, and I actually sang along. Filthy power overflows the sky. Let's have another one of the falling lotus. So cool, I can't stop. Please consider the feelings of the female fans. You'll lose the babies if you do this. Reported no shooting. The previous episode was Pork Bun and Madblade causing trouble in Black Pine. This episode continued from the previous one, and everyone watched with great interest. After completing the mission, in the second half of the episode, the scene suddenly changed to a huge city under construction, and the bright Bennett Sanctuary 1 jumped into everyone's eyes. In the scene, Han Zhao, dressed in black, stood with his hands behind his back. The comments paused for a moment, then suddenly exploded. Wow, I see Uncle Black again. Video host with a conscience. Eat one of my recommendation tickets. After so many days, they finally saw Black Phantom appear in Pork Bun's video in person. This was the only one. The audience felt a sense of familiarity, as if they were seeing a familiar face. Since the start of the open beta, Han Xiao had been in the eyes of the players. He had a special place in the hearts of the players. Wild Boy opened his eyes wide, not wanting to miss a single second. Black Phantom brought us to a special scene that was under construction. During this time, I found a main mission on Black Phantom. There was a lot of discussion in the bullet screen. The players all knew that Han Xiao had a main storyline mission, and the requirements for accepting the hidden main storyline mission were very strict. Could it be that this main storyline mission was different? Port Bun showed his mission list, and it was a shiny new mission, Black Phantom Sanctuary 3. What is this? The mission name actually has Black Phantom in it. What is a shelter? It's very similar to the name of this scene. Port Bun revealed the inside story with an excited tone. The Dark Net was going to build shelter, and Black Phantom was going to bring a team of thousands of people to gray metal ruins to build a city. They could get the hint from Han Xiao. This time, there was no need for any prerequisites, and the mission could be triggered easily. After listening to the mission description, the bullet screen was filled with shock again. It's building a city. God, what a huge main storyline. The scale is almost the same as the Expedition War. This is also Blue Star's main storyline. Wild Boy paused the video, opened his eyes wide, and carefully read the mission description a few times. He swallowed his saliva and continued playing. He did not have time to think about what a shelter was. He saw Han Xiao in the video talking loudly to his subordinates. The dark clouds of war covered the blue sky like the wings of death. The wounds of the previous generation were torn apart by blood before they could heal. Only a few decades have passed, and no one will forget the pain that war brought to the world. Until today, it still affects the land under our feet, the blue sky above our heads, radiation, dust, death, and the extinction of the country. How ridiculous! After the old era, our civilian technology regressed, but the military technology used to deal with our own kind continued to develop. They fought for ideology and national interests, spreading death with steel and fire. For these empty and false reasons, they slaughtered their own kind. Countless lives will be taken away by the whirlpool of war. The world will be devastated by them, and it will be on the decline. Maybe the end of the world will come quietly one day. Building a shelter is for the continuation of civilization. Even if the world is destroyed tomorrow, I will preserve the last spark of civilization. I'm not great, but too many people are insignificant. If no one is willing to contribute, fine, I will go first. I know I won't be the last. Han Xiao's tone was rhythmic. Wild Boy held his breath. Even through the screen, he could feel a surge of passion in his heart. It was so infectious. Wild Boy was not the only one who was shocked. I'm not great, but too many people are insignificant appeared on the screen. There were even 3 exclamation marks. It looked very impressive. So you are this kind of Black Phantom. There were also a series of such comments floating on the screen. In their impression, Black Phantom was a man of few words, but this speech changed his image. Many players had a clearer understanding of Han Xiao. They did not expect Black Phantom to be so ambitious. After watching it, Wild Boy's emotions surged. At this time, he saw an announcement from J. Green Sky in the Guild channel. Attention, everyone. The Guild is collecting the coordinates and information of the gray metal ruins. Those who provide information will be rewarded. Rewind time to one day ago. Han Xiao gathered the team of 1,000 people that followed him to build the city, mobilized them before departure, and made the speech in the video. At that time, Bennett just wanted Han Xiao to say something casually. He did not expect him to say such a big thing. He was shocked like everyone else. The surrounding workers put down their work and gradually gathered. The number of people increased, and they looked up at Han Xiao on the stage. Seeing the excited look on everyone's face, Han Xiao knew that the effect would be explosive. He copied this speech from the future Bennett to shock everyone. In the past, Bennett had established his position in the hearts of the players with his noble aspirations. Han Xiao said first. No matter what, when Bennett was mentioned in the future, the players would definitely think of him. This deepened the player's impression of him and added additional value to his character. He knew that the players liked to see things like this. A character with noble aspirations was usually a selling point. Furthermore, Bennett did not need to care about the player's image of him, so Han Xiao did not refuse. At the same time, he could also move Bennett. There were many benefits. Players all like the additional story of a character. Showing some special characteristics will help to gain the player's favor. Han Xiao nodded. He wanted the players to follow the image he created. As for whether this was true or not, if he did not say it, no one would know. She turned around and saw that Bennett's expression had changed. What she had said had struck a chord in his heart. Of course, those were his own words to begin with. Bennett was deeply touched. Han Xiao had said what was in his heart. He only felt that Han Xiao was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. Just like rain dripping into a dry desert, Bennett realized that he was no longer alone. He finally found a comrade. Everything is for the continuation of civilization. He understands me. Bennett gave Han Xiao a gratified look. Speech was a very scary skill. It could motivate people. Originally, most of the workers here came to work for the money, but now they felt that there was something more in their hearts. The directors were shocked. They did not expect Black Phantom, who had killed countless people, to have such perseverance. They looked at him in a new light. The next day, the construction team of Fallout Shelter 3 gathered. The massive fleet of vehicles dragged a cloud of smoke behind them as they passed through the barren fields and disappeared into the horizon. The fleet was equipped with a reconnaissance helicopter that flew at low altitude. It was the vehicle of important people. If there was any danger, they could escape. However, since Han Xiao chose to take the car, Huang Yu took the helicopter without hesitation. He did not bother to be polite with Han Xiao. Han Xiao felt the vibration of the off-road truck in the back seat and browsed through the team's information. At this time, a notification appeared on the interface. Current goal: protect the fleet and reach Gray Metal Ruins. Current team size: 1-0-34 when reaching the destination. The team's loss rate is below 20%. Reward: 250,000 EXP. Mission rating increased. Current rating: the sudden appearance of the mission target is a feature of a long-term mission. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. He suddenly realized that his eyebrows have been too active recently. No, I have to be more careful. Sanctuary 3's mission rating changed in real time. When the requirements were completed, the rating would increase. Since the mission had just started, he had not done anything yet. Of course, it would be the lowest level E rating. The team consisted of 700 workers and technicians. The remaining 300 were soldiers and guards. They were organized into teams of 20, guarding the periphery of the fleet. The armed forces are not enough. I have to strengthen the team. Chapter 219. It would take 4 to 5 days to travel from Sanctuary 1 to Gray Metal Ruins, so the fleet could only camp in the wilderness. On the first day of departure, at dusk, under Han Zhao's instructions, the fleet found a safe spot in the wilderness and rested there. It was more dangerous to travel after dark, as many beasts were active at night. The Darknet soldiers patrolled around the campsite in shifts. Han Xiao gathered the important people of the team for a meeting. Assistant Huang Yu, Engineering Manager Coney Fury, and Guard Captain Lu Chao. The blueprint of Gray Metal Ruins renovation plan was laid out on the table, and Coney Fury started to talk. The initial renovation of the entire city was originally planned to take 3 months to clean up the weeds, chase away the beasts, clean up the ruins, complete the construction of the sanctuary, install the power grid, water supply, and so on. However, this is a standard plan of 30,000 workers. We only have 1,000 people in the first month, so we can't do anything. Even cleaning up the ruins is difficult. Coney Fury was helpless. Han Xiao nodded and looked at Huang Yu. Do you have any suggestions? Huang Yu said perfunctorily, no. Noticing Huang Yu's indifferent attitude, Han Xiao roughly guessed what Huang Yu was thinking. He was not willing to be his assistant. Han Xiao did not mind. He did not need an assistant anyway. He turned around and said, manpower is not a problem. I plan to complete the blueprint construction in a month. Coney Fury was stunned. That requires at least 100,000 people. Even Sanctuary 1 does not have that many workers. I have an idea. Han Xiao did not say it directly. Huang Yu looked on coldly. The hiring fee of 100,000 workers was astronomical, and even if you had the money, you might not be able to hire so many people. He did not know where Han Xiao's confidence came from. Lu Chao suddenly pressed on his earpiece and said urgently, "Your Excellency Black Phantom, there's a plane approaching. Go on, take a look." Walking out of the tent, the team's guards looked at the sky vigilantly. In the dark night sky, a large plane with flashing signal lights was approaching. They did not know if it was a friend or foe. "It's okay. I called for the airdrop." Han Xiao smiled. The plane flew over their heads and dropped a few huge boxes of supplies that were tied together. They landed not far from the campsite with the Fabian logo on the boxes. Han Xiao made use of his connections to get Fabian to drop a large number of mechanical parts. Of course, he would have to spend money. However, he was now rich and didn't care about such a small expense. After a false alarm, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Huang Yu was secretly shocked. Black Phantom's connections were much wider than he had imagined to be able to casually call for the airdrop from the veteran Fabian Corporation. These parts were worth millions of dollars. Han Xiao ordered his men to move them to the logistics vehicles and began to manufacture machines. Now that he was rich, he could freely manufacture all kinds of combat machines that could be used to protect the team. The mechanic's most famous battle tactic was the human wave tactic. For the next 2 days, Han Xiao worked in the construction vehicle. The caravan arrived at a desert. The sun was shining brightly, and the high temperature made the sand as hot as soldering iron. The air on the surface of the ground was distorted. The fleet stopped under a barbera tree. This tree was a unique plant in the Blue Star Desert and was also known as the umbrella of life. The shade of the tree was like a small island, isolating the heat. Its sap was sweet and could be directly sucked to quench one's thirst. Everyone's mouths and tongues were dry. As the soldiers patrolled, everyone was drenched in sweat. Rumble. The desert in the distance was suddenly flooded. Countless giant beetles broke out of the ground. Each of them was more than half a meter long. Their shells were brown and shiny, and they looked ferocious. They had 6 pairs of chelicerae and 2 pairs of pincers. The sound of their movements was like the waves of the sea. The swarm swarmed toward the barbera tree. Beast attack. After the alarm was sounded, the 300 soldiers hurriedly got into position with their guns raised. They realized that there was a swarm of insects coming from all directions. It was like a sea of beetles, and there was nowhere to run. They were all terrified, and their hands that were holding the guns trembled slightly. The desert bloodshell pincers were social creatures that lived in the desert. They were powerful desert predators. Wherever they passed, there would be no life. There were at least tens of thousands of them. "Get in the car, get in the car. Crush a path." Huang Yu shouted hurriedly. He then quickly jumped into the helicopter and urged the pilot to take off. Facing so many insects, no one had the will to fight. After hearing Huang Yu's order, they prepared to get in the car and escape. At this time, Han Xiao walked out of the construction vehicle and said, "Don't panic. Everyone get into position and prepare to fight." Captain Lu Chao said anxiously, "There are too many insects. We can't defend all directions. Once we fight, there is a high chance that we will suffer heavy losses." Huang Yu shouted, "Black Phantom, get in the helicopter quickly." Han Xiao waved his hand. Huang Yu cursed in his mind. Seeing that the swarm of insects was getting closer and closer, he did not care about Han Xiao anymore and ordered the pilot to take off immediately. The pilot was also scared, so he immediately started the helicopter. The rotor started, and the helicopter left the ground. The ground troops did not dare to disobey Han Xiao's order. They watched nervously as the swarm of insects approached quickly. At this time, Han Xiao took out his tablet and pressed a few buttons. Virum, 12 combat robots drove out of the logistics vehicles. Their triangular tracks rotated, and their speed was not slower than the vehicles. Everyone watched in shock as these robots quickly scattered in all directions. They were like iron guards. The cold metallic luster reflected the speckles of sunlight that passed through the shade of the trees, and it was as if they had grown golden scales. These Rangers were the latest version of the 2.5 generation. Han Xiao had upgraded the blueprint a few times, and he was not the same as before. The basic attributes of the machines that he built had increased by a lot, and their quality had also reached blue. The 2.5 generation Ranger robots were all equipped with automatic fire control systems, which increased the firepower and durability of the magazine. They were also about the same height as humans, and their tracks could overcome many difficult terrains. When the mission notification appeared, Han Xiao had guessed that the journey would not be peaceful, so he called for airdrops and built a large number of machines in the past 2 days. Han Xiao's manufacturing speed had become very fast. When he was LV-20, he used to take a few days to build the Ranger robots. Now, he could finish it in less than 10 minutes. When mechanics' manufacturing speed exceeded a certain threshold, they would be able to create weapons on the spot on the battlefield. As long as there were materials, there would be an endless supply of weapons. This was an ability that only high-level mechanics had. They needed to learn speed-level assembly, which was also an important reason why the mechanic class had risen in version 3. So, go, take down all the metal discs from the car and place them in all directions. The Darknet's soldiers obeyed his orders immediately. There were a total of 20 metal discs. After placing them on the ground, Han Xiao activated the program and started to transform. The base was inserted into the sand and fixed, and the folded modules assembled into gun barrels. The entire process took only 4 to 5 seconds. These were the foldable small turrets. Han Xiao had upgraded the blueprint, and they had automatic fire control systems. Looking at the thick, long, and black barrels, the soldiers were slightly relieved. When the swarm of insects was within 400 meters, the 2.5 generation Ranger robots and the small turrets opened fire at the same time. With the camp under the Barbera tree as the center, a storm of steel bloomed in all directions. The rain of bullets covered the sky, and the sound of guns and cannons rang out in unison. In an instant, countless green goo exploded in the swarm of insects. In front of the killing weapons made by humans, the shells that the desert blood armor claws were so proud of were as fragile as eggs. The steel and fire penetrated the giant beetles one after another. The area within 400 meters of the camp became a natural moat. Countless insect corpses were left behind, and the swarm of insects could not move an inch forward. The desert was wet with their blood. After a round of fire, at least 1/3 of the swarm of insects were gone. A few rangers drove out of the camp, equipped with sunworm flamethrowers. The cone-shaped flames swept across the swarm of insects, and the pincers of the desert blood armored claws could not penetrate the platinum alloy armor of the rangers at all. The fierce firepower was a complete one-sided slaughter. This was the violence of a mechanic. Group battles were the advantage of the mechanic class. Espers and pugilists might be good at fighting, but their stamina was limited. Of course, the limitation of a mechanic was money. This batch of machinery cost millions, and even a max-level player in version 1.0 would not be able to afford it. Furthermore, the cost of ammunition was enough to drain the wallet of any player. Thousands of steel-core, armor-piercing bullets were fired every second. Funding had always been a problem for mechanics. Building a mech legion was one of the more powerful combat styles of the mechanic class, but also cost the most money. When the average strength of the enemy was stronger, they would need machines of higher technology to form a legion, and the cost would increase exponentially. It was very difficult for normal mechanic class players not to use the army style. Even if they sold everything they had to build a legion, the losses in battle would be too much for them to bear. The army style was usually used as a trump card. Han Xiao was not worried about funding. After all, he knew how to make money. However, he did not want to use the army style for the time being. He only wanted to build a simple guard group so that they would have enough firepower when necessary. Lu Chao had been holding the assault rifle, ready to fire when the swarm of insects entered the 300-meter range. However, the swarm of insects was always stopped 400 meters away by the rain of steel bullets. He raised the rifle until his hands were sore, but he still could not find an opportunity to fire. This firepower is too strong. Lu Chao looked at the turret beside him that was spitting bullets. The automatic bolt was like a piston cylinder, and the bullet shells were scattered all over the ground. A few even hit his face. Chapter 220. The battle only lasted for 15 minutes before it ended. The waves of steel slaughtered the swarm of insects, and the ground was covered in green liquid. The smell evaporated under the high temperature, making it extremely pungent. The team was unscathed. Everyone looked at Han Xiao, who was smoking calmly, and felt very safe. They were worried when they left the shelter. After all, Blue Star had many dangers in the wilderness, but now it seemed that as long as Han Xiao was there would be no danger. Lu Chao realized that the guards he led had become the targets of protection. He could not help but admire Han Xiao. The strong were always sought after. Your mechanical creation has killed the desert bloodshell pincer, LV-15. You have received 10 EXP. If one's own level was too much higher than the monster's level, the EXP would be greatly reduced. One insect only gave 10 EXP, but there were at least 10,000 of them. Han Xiao looked at the interface and received more than 100,000 EXP. The hovering helicopter landed. Huang Yu looked down from the helicopter and saw the endless swarm of insects falling like wheat, but the camp remained unmoved. The countless bullets were like blooming petals. The scene shocked him deeply. Huang Yu originally planned to escape on the helicopter and almost left the others behind. Now that the crisis was over, his expression became a little awkward. He felt that the eyes of the people around him were full of contempt and dissatisfaction. The mechanic class is so strong. Hao Tian held Bear Cub and frowned. He was a pugilist, so he could not help but worry about his career prospects. On the other hand, Madblade, who was a pugilist in his previous life, was more and more glad that he chose the mechanic class. This was very awkward. More material. Poor Bun was very happy. Following Black Phantom, there was no need to worry about not having enough content to make videos. The 3 players also triggered the mission of protecting the team, but they did not do much and received a lot of EXP. The other 2 were not surprised, but it was the first time Hao Tian experienced it. Looking at the huge increase in EXP, Hao Tian had mixed feelings. The reward of doing missions was not as good as following Han Xiao. No wonder so many people wanted to trigger Black Phantom's hidden storyline. The reward was so good that even he, a professional god, had a similar thought. The dangers of the wilderness came from wild beasts, bandits, and radioactive dust. With the protection of this group of steel weapons, they encountered several wild beasts along the way, but they were all defeated. It was scary but not dangerous. With only one day's journey to Grey Metal Ruins, the caravan set up camp. The starry night was bright, and countless stars twinkled in the night sky. It was a clear night, and when one looked up, one could see a whole river of stars reflected in one's eyes. The technological environment of Blue Star was similar to that of Earth, but the natural environment was more beautiful. The coordinates were the 9th star zone of the Garden Galaxy. The civilization density in this star zone was very low, but the planets were very dense. A large number of desolate planets were quietly captured by the denser planets and moved around them. The Blue Star revolved around a star, neither too close nor too far. The temperature was suitable for human habitation. The Blue Star is also orbited by several satellites in the celestial sense. These are the moons that reflect the light of the star onto the planet's rotating dark side. Before the old era, there were countries that built rockets to land on the satellites, but the planets were desolate. The opportunity for the Ghidorah civilization to come into contact with a Blue Star civilization was when a Ghidorah exploration star shuttle's interstellar spectrometer captured the vacuum noise of a low-tech rocket made by the Blue Star civilization. Ghidorah was a star system-level civilization that dominated the Garden Galaxy. Their exploration area covered many star zones in the Garden Galaxy. They leaned toward the lawful faction and had a friendly attitude toward civilization contact. Han Xiao had recently seen the Blue Star Civilization's research on celestial bodies. This information could be obtained by the players through various channels, and the details were very realistic. Therefore, the players had a strong sense of immersion. From the perspective of an NPC, Han Xiao was able to see more things. In the tent, Han Xiao and Coney Fury were discussing the blueprint. At this time, a guard walked in and reported, "Your Excellency, we've captured a wanderer. He's wandering around our camp." This was a young wanderer. His clothes were ragged, and he had a double-barreled shotgun that was confiscated by the guards. When he saw that the camp was filled with armed guards, fear appeared on his face, and he started to tremble. "Are there any settlements nearby?" Han Xiao had an idea. He turned around and asked. Lu Chao looked at the map and said, "There are a few medium-sized settlements." Han Xiao nodded and stared at the young man thoughtfully. The young man only felt that the gaze of the man in black in front of him was oppressive, making his legs weak. Without waiting for Han Xiao to ask, he explained in a trembling voice, "I'm a wanderer from a nearby settlement. I came out to hunt and happened to see you passing by, so I wanted to take a closer look." Han Xiao touched his chin and thought for a few seconds. Seeing that the young man was thin and sallow, he said, "Lu Chao, give him some food." The young man was stunned. "Go back and tell the people in your settlement that our group will be building a city in the gray metal ruins. We'll provide plenty of job opportunities and pay them well. If they want to settle down, we welcome them. Tell your chief that I hope they'll move in." The heavy bag of food made the young man come back to his senses. He suddenly showed a surprised expression. He was a hunter in the settlement. Recently, he had not hunted any prey. The people in the settlement could only eat 30% of their fill every day. The food was enough for them to eat a few meals. When he was caught, the young man was very scared. Now that he found that these people were not bad people, he was slightly relieved. He secretly thought about Han Zhao's proposal. Most wanderers did not have enough to eat. If they could exchange work for food, it was indeed very attractive. After sending the young man away, Han Xiao took out the map and said, "The gray metal ruins are very desolate. There are no signs of life within 15 kilometers of it, but further away, there are more than 10 settlements scattered around. Most of them are small, with a total of 2,000 to 3,000 people. Lu Chao, gather some people and bring food to spread the news of us building a shelter." The purpose of a sanctuary was to shelter the refugees in the wilderness, so it was normal to attract wanderers. Huang Yu thought that he saw through Han Zhao's plan. He thought to himself, so he wants to hire wanderers as workers, but it's still too little. Han Xiao wanted to complete the blueprint of the sanctuary in a month, so he would need at least 100,000 people. This was far from enough. Huang Yu shook his head. He was not optimistic about the 1-month plan. It would most likely fail, but it would not cause any loss to the organization. The only thing that would be damaged was Black Phantom's reputation and face. If he could not fulfill his promise, the other upper management's opinion of Han Xiao would naturally decrease. Anyway, I'll apply to be transferred back to the headquarters after a month. Huang Yu did not want to be an assistant and waste his time in Sanctuary 3 without any chance to make any contributions. Not mentioning Huang Yu's thoughts, Lu Chao said, "But if we split up the guards, the defense of the team won't be enough." Han Xiao pointed at the Generation 2. 5 rangers that were patrolling the camp according to the program and laughed. "I'll give you a chance to say that again. I promise to complete the mission." Lu Chao immediately changed his words and stood at attention. The endless gorged wasteland, the brownish-red ground was like solidified blood. Returning to this place again, the scenery was very familiar. Speaking of which, I haven't been back to the base for a long time, Han Xiao thought. The base had always been in standby mode, so he did not use it much. Gray metal ruins, the outline of this abandoned city, appeared in his vision. There used to be a road in the wasteland, but it had been neglected for many years, so it was overgrown with weeds. The cement road was cracked, and green sprouted from the cracks. There were also old grayish-yellow newspapers that were blown by the wind and moved slowly on the road. The street lamps that were no longer lit were covered with vines. The atmosphere was bleak. The entrance to Grey Metal Ruins was a wide, abandoned road. The fleet moved along the road. Other than the sound of the engine and wheels, it was completely silent. Arrived at Grey Metal Ruins. Current team size, 1,034. Damage rate, 0% target completed. You have received 250,000 EXP. Mission rating increased to D-. The main mission of the Sanctuary that Han Shao had received was Build Sanctuary 3. It was a huge mission that involved the overall situation. Therefore, according to the dozens of buildings that a sanctuary should have, there were dozens of construction requirements. The current target of the mission had changed. Current target, complete the blueprint. Time limit, 3 months current time. Day 1, complete the following 13 construction requirements, expand/retract, within 3 months. Reward, 800,000 EXP, plus 1,250 Darknet reputation. Mission rating increased. Chapter 2:21. These 13 construction requirements were all basic construction, such as repelling beasts, clearing the ruins, water and electricity grid, housing, the number of residents, city walls, and so on. There were dozens of requirements for Sanctuary 3, and this was only a part of them. The blueprint construction was originally a 3-month plan, and the goal was to complete the shelter's prototype within the specified time. Sanctuary 1 has been under construction for a month, and the progress is about half done. Using them as a reference, 3 months seems to be more than enough. Han Shao suddenly thought about it. No, Bennett has tens of thousands of workers, and I only have 1,000 in the first month. If I do the mission the normal way, the time will be very tight. Suddenly, there was a commotion in front of them, and the fleet quickly stopped. There were thousands of people gathered at the entrance of the abandoned city. Something's wrong. The guards quickly got out of the car and surrounded the group in the center. At this time, the crowd also noticed the fleet and moved toward them. These people were wearing strange clothes, and the people of the dark net recognized them immediately. Inhumans. Nervousness exploded in their hearts. Facing the mysterious Inhumans, everyone felt scared. Inhumans were much more dangerous than beasts, and they could revive. Just Black Phantom's mechanical creation alone might not be able to protect everyone. Wang Yu was shocked. So many Inhumans? Why are they gathered here? The organization sent people to the Grey Metal Ruins to scout a while ago, and there was no one here. In Han Zhao's vision, the dense IDs above the players' heads made him dizzy. This time, he lifted the corner of his windbreaker and walked out of the car. He pushed through the crowd and stood at the front of the fleet with his hands behind his back. Sandwiched between the two parties, his posture was like a javelin pointing straight at the sky. A light wind blew past, and his windbreaker fluttered like a black flag fluttering in the wind. Just his imposing appearance alone immediately attracted everyone's attention. The people of the Darknet were shocked. When the Inhumans saw Han Shao, they actually stopped on their own. Black Phantom, we're here for the mission. This was honest. We heard you want to build a shelter, so we're here to help. This was immersive. After waiting for so long, I almost thought it was just a rumor. He heaved a sigh of relief. Han Shao clasped his hands behind his back and nodded pretentiously. Thank you for your help. Everything is for the people. Our convoy is preparing to enter the city. Please make way. When we settle down, we will plan the construction goals of the city. At that time, there will be many job opportunities. Hearing this, the players obediently made way. The people of the dark net opened their mouths wide in shock. These Inhumans were actually here to help Black Phantom. Since when did Black Phantom have such a huge influence among the Inhumans? Huang Yu was stunned. Han Shao had the confidence to complete the prototype within a month because he could command the mutants? To Blue Star, Inhumans were a strange phenomenon. Everyone was very vigilant, and when they came into contact with Inhumans, their attitude was relatively cold. Therefore, when he saw this scene, Huang Yu only felt that it was inconceivable. How did Black Phantom do it? Why would the mutants respect him? I have to report this to Mr. Bennett. Huang Yu thought. With the addition of the players, The team instantly expanded by a few times and entered the gray metal ruins. The convoy found a place to stop. Coney Fury hesitated and said, "Your Excellency, we need to clear an area to set up camp. It's not early now, so it's best to finish before dark. We don't have many people, so we have to start immediately. You go find those Inhumans for help." "Me?" Coney Fury was a little scared. "With me here, what are you afraid of?" Han Shao patted him on the shoulder. Coney Fury had nothing to say, so he had to bite the bullet and get off the car. He took out the loudspeaker, prepared for a while, and said loudly to the players, "I need some people to clear a safe area nearby for everyone to set up camp. Since you are here to help, I'll have to trouble you." These words immediately triggered a quest, and all the players received it. With a boom, they scattered like birds and beasts and immediately got to work. The surroundings immediately became a construction site, clearing up debris and beasts. Coney Fury was surprised. He did not expect this group of Inhumans to give him face. He turned around and looked at Han Shao in the car. He understood that the Inhumans were not giving him face, but rather, they were giving face to this mysterious officer. With the help of the players, a safe area was cleared in the evening. It was a stadium, which was naturally suitable for outdoor camping. The dangerous insects and beasts around were all driven away by the players. The people of the Dark Net got Han Zhao's approval and set up small folding turrets around the stadium for automatic defense, which attracted many players to look at them curiously. Using the vehicles as barriers to protect the tents, the players rested in the other areas. The inside of the stadium became a bustling area with thousands of players interacting. Many of them knew each other, and some even set up stalls. It was quite a lively scene, dispelling the bleak atmosphere of the abandoned city. The ruins that had been silent for decades were once again filled with voices. Great God! When Hao Tian was being led by Bear Cub, he suddenly heard someone calling him. He turned around and saw Jade Green Sky and the other core members of the Sky Territory Guild behind him, looking at him excitedly. Hao Tian nodded, looked at the crowd, and said, "You've worked hard." "Hello. It's what we should do." Jade Green Sky was excited. Only those who were familiar with him would call him Long. Sky Territory was a guild under the Long Sky Club, and Hao Tian was the pillar of Long Sky. They were colleagues and knew each other. The club guilds needed to provide help to the pro players because the pro players were the face of the club. Hao Tian's position was higher, and he was also the idol of his own guild. Jade Green Sky did not hesitate to bring people to the sanctuary. One of the important reasons was that he knew Hao Tian was with Black Phantom, so he rushed over to help. Among all the players who came to the sanctuary, Sky Territory was the only big guild. Most of the other players were casual players. Bunhit Dog was recognized at a glance. As the most popular video host at the moment, he had a lot of fans, and they were all very passionate. "Dog Author, don't run. Give me your head. I'll show you a treasure. Taste the anger of the Africans. You still haven't updated? I'll break your legs." A group of angry fans waved their weapons and chased after Bunhit Dog, yelling loudly. The players at the side made way for them and watched the show with great interest. Some people even started to sell snacks and cheered loudly. All kinds of "kill him" sounds could be heard continuously, mixed with laughter. Poor Bun did not forget to record while running away. He looked at the camera and said loudly, "This meeting went very smoothly. The fans are very passionate. As the saying goes, beating is affection, scolding is love. The more you love, the more you want to hurt him. If you don't kill each other, how can you love each other? I'm very comforted. Come, give me a smile." Poor Bun turned around and filmed the players who chased after him. He fully displayed his style of courting death. This was the self-cultivation of a video host. If he did not court death, how could he collect material that normal players could not see? "Dog thief, eat my axe." Whoosh! A flying axe flew past his head. Poor Bun was so scared that he shrank his head and ran away without looking back. The players behind him were panting heavily. "Mother of Asterisker, how can he run so fast? My stamina is almost empty. He's with Black Phantom after all. His level is higher than ours. Ah, bastard European." The players outside the tent were happy But Madblade was very serious. He was facing an important choice. After successfully advancing, Madblade was faced with three paths: Cannon Master, Mechanic, and Mechanical Pugilist. He was hesitant. The mechanic combat ability that Han Xiao showed was indeed very strong, but personally, Madblade was more inclined toward Mechanical Pugilist. He had a feeling that the mechanic path was not suitable for him. In the past, Han Xiao had also given him advice that he had potential in close combat, and hinted that the Mechanical Pugilist path was more suitable for him. This main account was going to participate in the Pro League. If he made the wrong choice, the disadvantage of starting over would be too great. Therefore, this choice was very important. Madblade hesitated for a long time and finally decided to use the coin toss method. It was said that the moment the coin was tossed, there would be an answer in one's heart. Because the convoy camp was not allowed to enter, the players formed a market near the camp and waited for Black Phantom to come out and give them the mission. A petite female player walked in the market while carrying an equipment bag that was twice as big as her body. She looked around curiously. Passing through the market, Maple Moon stopped outside the camp. She took a deep breath and held the phone in her hand tightly. Finally, LV-20. Chapter 2:22. In the tent in the center of the camp, Han Xiao looked at the blueprint on the table and thought about how to use the player's advantage. His mission quota had increased. The highest reward for a single mission was a little over 60,000 experience points, which was still a little short of 80,000 experience points. The total daily quota was 7 times that of a single mission, which meant that he could assign missions with a total of 420,000 experience points each day. He realized that the easiest way to increase his quota was to open up factions and gain favorability. Levels and grades were natural, and legendary points were something that could only be found. The quota did not cost his own experience points. For such a big mission like building a city, his quota alone was not enough. Therefore, Han Xiao thought about it and decided on a way to assign missions. That was to separate the construction of the gray metal ruins into different departments and set up a person in charge. The players could go to the person in charge to receive work, mission, without using up his own quota. Building Sanctuary 3 was a main storyline. If he could assign missions to the players, then logically, the other NPCs in the team could do it too. This should solve the limit of the mission quota. The other NPCs don't have an interface, but since they are part of the city building team, it should be fine to assign missions. Letting the other NPCs assign missions on his behalf would not only avoid the limit of his quota, but it would also be helpful to his own mission. Since the mission he got was a unified one, the final result of the player's construction would be the result of his mission. The difference between the two missions came from their different identities. Han Xiao was the person in charge of the sanctuary, which was his advantage. Han Xiao suddenly had a new idea. If he encountered such a big mission next time, he could replicate this experience and use his advantage as an NPC to get a higher faction relationship. He could then become the mission issuer and use the strength of the players to achieve his goal. This way, I only need to manage the person in charge and can plan the overall situation. I could be a hands-off boss and use my free time to build machinery to reach the 5 purple equipment requirement. Han Xiao nodded to himself. It was perfect that he could do the main storyline and have time for his own development. This was not a trap for the players. The players could also do missions and gain benefits. Their participation in the construction of the city could build a cohesive force. Once the sanctuary was built, all the participants would have a sense of achievement and pride. This is a city built by us players. It was a win-win situation. Han Xiao had a bold idea. Maybe I can turn this sanctuary into something similar to a player's main city. This will have an unparalleled effect on my influence. Everyone who comes to the sanctuary will see my name. After finalizing the details, he gathered the construction team and the guards for a meeting. Where's Lu Zhao? Why isn't he here for the meeting? Han Xiao glanced around. Everyone did not react for a moment. Someone cautiously said, "You sent him out to contact the rogues." "Nonsense! How could I forget?" Han Xiao glared. Before everyone could react, he coughed dryly and said seriously, "Building a shelter from scratch is a huge project. I have divided the blueprint construction into 13 departments. This is the information. It covers construction, exploration, and so on. Each department has a person in charge. My goal is to complete the blueprint construction as soon as possible. It would be best if I could shorten the time to within a month. We don't have that many people, and we don't even have enough mutants outside." Someone said, "Don't worry about that. There will be more people sooner or later." Han Xiao knocked on the table and emphasized, "Is everyone clear?" Everyone could only nod. 1 month was too much of a rush, but since it was a request from their boss, they could only try their best. Otherwise, they would not be able to bear the consequences. Although Han Xiao was still kind, no one forgot that he was the strongest person in the organization. He was a legend who had killed countless people, and he was currently the #1 assassin. Han Xiao announced the person in charge, and Huang Yu was not part of it. Huang Yu was quite happy. He had nothing to do. Although thousands of mutants came, it was still a drop in the bucket. It was impossible to complete the prototype in a month. In the end, Sanctuary 3 could only be completed in a few months. By that time, Sanctuary 1 would have been completed. As an assistant, he did not have many benefits, so he did not plan to help. Huang Yu had just told Bennett about the mutants coming to help Han Xiao. Bennett was very calm and did not have any opinions about it. It could be seen that Bennett trusted Black Phantom a lot, and the two had a very good relationship. Huang Yu also roughly understood why Bennett sent him as an assistant. It was to choose a capable assistant to help his friend. "It's all because I'm too good." Huang Yu sighed helplessly. The meeting came to an end. Han Xiao had already explained the affairs of each department clearly. In the end, his face became very serious. He said in a deep voice, "I've said everything that needs to be said. Now, there's a very urgent mission that must be done first." Seeing Han Xiao's serious expression, everyone became nervous. Looking around, Han Xiao said seriously, "Write down the name of the sanctuary first. Remember to use my name." Everyone's tense expression suddenly collapsed. The people in charge of each department left the camp. According to Han Xiao's instructions, they organized the people in an orderly manner. The players who had been waiting for a long time immediately gathered around and chose different jobs according to their preferences, triggering different city-building missions. Grey Metal Ruins was divided into 5 areas: North, South, East, West, and Central. The missions given to the players were also divided into different areas. After receiving the missions, the players immediately formed teams and looked for people to do the missions together. It was even livelier at night than during the day. The first and most important task was to expel the beasts and clean up the ruins. Only then could they carry out the various constructions. With the stadium as the center, the players spread out and scattered to the various areas of Grey Metal Ruins. Gunshots could be heard from time to time. There were many beasts living in Grey Metal Ruins, so the players had plenty of chances to fight. These construction missions could be done repeatedly, and the rewards were quite good. The interface also notified the players that they were building Sanctuary 3. After success, they would receive a huge amount of extra experience, so they were even more excited. Black Phantom Sanctuary 3. The name of this city had Black Phantom in it, so the players had a deeper impression of Han Xiao. The shelter had a person's name on it, and it sounded very impressive. On the first night, the players cleaned up a large area, and the efficiency shocked the people of the Darknet. This was comparable to the speed of 10,000 workers. The players were all supers, so their work abilities were enhanced. With the help of the interface, it was clear what to do with the missions, and their goals were very clear. When the players in the Darknet construction team were in full swing, Han Xiao received a call from Maple Moon. He had left the mission for Maple Moon to find him when she was at level 20. He remembered and brought her to the camp. They had not seen each other for a while, so Maple Moon looked around curiously. Han Xiao also called the other 3 guys over. He was going to give the 4 of them some extra missions. The 4 backups finally met. With Han Xiao's current ability, it was more than enough to train 4 players. Mad Blade and Hao Tian, 2 pro gods in his previous life. Now, one was a mechanical pugilist, and the other was a pugilist. Maple Moon, one of the first mechanics to rise in his previous life. Port Bun, Beat Dog, a famous video host. The four of them had their own specialties and could help in different ways. They all stood in front of Han Xiao and sized each other up. As the only female player, Maple Moon received special treatment. The other three nodded to her to show their goodwill. Ah, so cute. Maple Moon stared at Hao Tian with shining eyes. She looked like she was going to eat him alive. Sweat appeared on Hao Tian's forehead. He stood straight and did not move. He watched as Maple Moon ran into his arms, or more accurately, he hugged Bear Cub and rubbed it lovingly. Bear Cub was confused the whole time. It shrunk into Hao Tian's arms and bit Maple Moon's finger a few times. Ah, so cute. Maple Moon's eyes lit up. She looked up and begged, God, can you let me hug it? Be clearer next time. Hao Tian's face stiffened. He could not wait to pass Bear Cub to Maple Moon. He took 2 steps back and felt relieved. Bunhit Dog also came over and reached out to tease Bear Cub. Bear Cub was stupid and cute. Its reaction was always half a beat slower. Its chubby paws kept slapping away the big hands that were kneading its butt. Beside him, Frenzied Sword kept his eyes on Han Xiao, looking like he was waiting for orders at any time. Okay, stop playing with my bear. Han Xiao coughed and interrupted them. I'm building a shelter. You guys go and help. As he said that, he set an extra mission for the 4 of them. If they completed a certain number of missions from the department heads, they would receive extra rewards. The other players did not have this privilege. These 4 players were his own people, so Han Xiao was willing to train them. The 4 of them naturally did not have any objections. They accepted the mission and left. Maple Moon, however, stayed behind and asked carefully, Can I learn skills? Han Xiao nodded and opened the interface for her. He could teach these 4 players any skills at any time. Other than the trump cards, the rest could be used to earn experience. Maple Moon also walked the path of a mechanic, so he could train her as a disciple. Maple Moon was a casual player and liked lifestyle games. It was worth it to train her as an assistant. Han Xiao was not stingy, and he had a good impression of Maple Moon. In his previous life, the great mechanic Han, who was still a newbie, had started playing since version 1.0. He had also chosen the mechanic class, and he had also had the experience of losing repeatedly in PvP battles. At one point, he had given up on the mechanic class, and if it was not because he liked it, he would have changed his account. In the professional arena, in version 3.0, Maple Moon, who participated in the competition for the first time, became a dark horse. She represented the rise of the mechanic class and gave Han Xiao a lot of encouragement. When he was young, he had even been a fan of Maple Moon for a while. Later on, he became more and more skilled and gradually became one of the representative experts of the mechanic class. Although he was not a professional player, the legend of Han Technician spread throughout the game. The players on the forums often discussed the rankings of the players who participated in the Pro League. Han Technician was a hot topic that had not died down for a long time. Han Technician became stronger and stronger, but Maple Moon was like a comet, leaving a mark on the milestones of the game, but quickly falling silent. She only shone in the 3rd and 4th versions. After all, Maple Moon was a casual player, and her PK skills improved slowly. Not everyone was as interested in a game as Han Technician. In the later versions, Maple Moon almost disappeared from the professional scene. It was said that she had terminated her contract with the club. Her light was only left in the memories of the old players. The Maple Moon in front of him was cute and delicate. It was hard to associate her with the figure in his memory. Looking at Maple Moon, who was struggling to choose a skill, Han Xiaoxin had mixed feelings. I wonder what will happen this time. Chapter 2:23. The Sanctuary was a huge project, and it was always difficult to start from scratch. However, Coney Fury had its ways. The planning was very detailed, and the construction was done in an orderly manner. The division of work between each department was very detailed. The main storyline of the Sanctuary also caused a sensation on the forums. The Expedition War was still brewing, and the Sanctuary became the first big main storyline mission to appear. It immediately attracted the attention of the players. Furthermore, the first batch of players had tried it themselves, and the news was very reliable. This was a large-scale main storyline, and they would only complain about the lack of people. The more people there were, the faster it would be completed. Good Lord! The southern continent instantly became lively. The players gathered their friends and headed to Sanctuary 3 together. It became a huge gathering, and the number of players in the Sanctuary increased like a snowball. There were now a few 100,000 players in Blue Star, and there were more than 100,000 in the southern continent alone. In just 2 days, more than 20,000 players had come to Sanctuary 3 through various channels. Han Xiao and the appeal of the main storyline had ignited the passion of the players. The 1,000 Dark Net members who followed them at the beginning were completely dumbfounded. Countless Inhumans came to help, and they were all called by Han Xiao. They felt like they were in a dream. The influence was terrifying, because the Inhumans did not sleep or rest, and their work efficiency was equivalent to that of several people. These 20,000 Inhumans were almost equivalent to 70 to 80,000 workers, and by the looks of it, there would be more Inhumans coming. It was not impossible to complete the prototype of the Sanctuary in a month. Realizing this possibility, the entire construction team was like they were on steroids, and they started construction with all their might. If Sanctuary 3 could be completed before Sanctuary 1, it would be a huge contribution that would shock the organization. In just 3 days, the camp had changed a lot. Simple houses were built, and the Darknet members all had roofs to cover their heads. Huang Yu paced outside Han Zhao's house for a long time before he finally made up his mind and knocked on the door. Creak! The door opened, and Han Zhao's figure appeared. He was wearing a mechanic's uniform and protective glasses. What's the matter? Han Zhao's tone was calm. Hearing this, Huang Yu suddenly felt uncertain. He smiled awkwardly and said, Your Excellency. Without waiting for him to finish, Han Xiao turned around and went back into the house. Come in and talk. Huang Yu hurriedly entered the door. Seeing Han Xiao pointing at him, he found a place to sit down. With his but close to the edge, he said with a fawning expression, Your Excellency, I hope to share some of your responsibilities. After all, I am your assistant. As the number of players increased, Huang Yu realized that the 1-month plan really had a chance to succeed. Once it succeeded, Sanctuary 3 would be the first completed example. This contribution was not small at all. Even as an assistant, his name would be recorded in the Darknet's merit book. Huang Yu couldn't sit still anymore. If he missed out on the credit, he would regret it to death. Because of his previous perfunctory attitude, he felt that he had already offended Han Xiao, so he didn't assign any tasks to him. If Han Xiao complained to Bennett again, this credit would be completely lost to him. Originally, he was quite happy that he had nothing to do, but now he was anxious. He only wanted to join the construction as soon as possible. That was why this scene happened. He shamelessly went to Han Zhao's door to make up for his previous disrespect. Han Xiao ignored him. Seeing Huang Yu sitting on pins and needles, he slowly said, You don't want to do anything, right? I understand my subordinates and gave you a break. What are you not satisfied with? What are you talking about? I am your assistant. I can also contribute my abilities. Huang Yu wiped his sweat with a sincere expression. Han Xiao crossed his arms and looked at Huang Yu meaningfully. He didn't say anything. Seeing this, Huang Yu's heart kept sinking. He felt that this credit was going to be lost. Unexpectedly, Han Xiao turned around and picked up a stack of documents. He threw it into his arms and said, These are the construction progress of the Sanctuary. Help me organize it and report to me if there's anything. Huang Yu held the documents and immediately stood up. Don't worry, I will handle it well. Go. Han Xiao waved his hand and went back to work in front of the lathe. The excited Huang Yu walked out of the house and let out a sigh of relief. Black Phantom naturally understood the potential of Sanctuary 3, but he didn't care about the past and was willing to let him join in to share the credit. This made him very grateful. Compared to his previous perfunctory attitude, Huang Yu couldn't help but feel ashamed. He was obedient to Han Xiao in his heart. Han Xiao had thought it through very clearly. There was no need to make a bad assistant. The small differences between them couldn't even be considered conflict. Seeing that Huang Yu had lowered his head, Han Xiao wouldn't purposely destroy his future. Furthermore, he didn't need an assistant to take care of the construction of the sanctuary. This kind of thing was very complicated, and it was giving him a headache. Now, he had completely become a hands-off manager and could do his own things 24/7. It had only been 3 days since the construction started, but the progress was like a wild dog that was out of control. The effort of the players still exceeded Han technicians' expectations. Even migrant workers were not as hardworking as them. They were all model workers. In the original timeline, when the players came in contact with the main storyline of the sanctuary, it was already past the earliest stage. It was the Darknet who took the initiative to hire the players. At that time, a few sanctuaries were being built at the same time. The players had different choices, so the number of people was spread out. Now, the players also found out that Han Xiao was in Sanctuary 3, so there were definitely other sanctuaries that needed to be built. However, there were very few channels for information, so they knew nothing about Sanctuary 1 and Sanctuary 2. On the other hand, the famous Black Phantom in Sanctuary 3 knew what to choose at first glance. Most people had a herd effect. As the number of players in Sanctuary 3 increased, it attracted other players as well. The number of people snowballed. Han Zhao's player main city plan had great prospects. Sanctuary 3 was full of people. All kinds of hawking, setting up stalls, and asking to team up could be heard. The players spontaneously formed many markets and areas. Where to sell things, where to PK. The bustling scene did have some characteristics of a main city. Even the players from the 6 nations had abandoned the expedition gathering and came here to build a city. The expedition mission had a level requirement, and since it had not started yet, some players chose the easier sanctuaries. Han Xiao felt a sense of accomplishment, as if he could raise his arms and call for help. Looks like my image building plan is very successful. Han Xiao was very satisfied with the players' reaction. He also paid attention to the reaction of the forums and the Darknet. The incident in Sanctuary 3 not only affected the players, but also in the eyes of the Blue Star organizations, it was another shocking scene. The issue of Inhumans had always been highly concerned. When the 6 nations found out that Inhumans were gathering in southern continent, they were confused after investigating the situation. Why was Black Phantom so influential among the Inhumans? How could he command the Inhumans? What was the relationship between the two? All the organizations were on high alert. The danger level of Black Phantom had increased to another level. The Darknet was the first to receive the news. Bennett was also shocked by the scale of the situation. He remembered that Han Xiao had said that he would surpass Sanctuary 1's progress in a month. It turned out that he was not joking. Looking at the progress, there was a real possibility of success. Bennett was not shocked, but happy. As long as the sanctuary could be built, it did not matter who came first. They had all contributed. He did not doubt the people he used, so he would not ask how Han Xiao got the help of the Inhumans. However, the Darknet executives felt a chill down their backs. They did not know if it was a blessing or a curse to have such a strong colleague. West of Sanctuary 3, Clock Tower District. The landmark of this area was a huge clock tower covered in vines. At this time, it had already become the player's stronghold. Nearby was a huge square. There was a dried-up river that separated the southeast, and the bridge was broken. A little further away was a cluster of low factory buildings. This place was originally a mixture of residential and industrial areas. Around the clock tower, the prototype of a factory had been built. There were a lot of building materials and generators inside. The terrain was open, so it was suitable to build a power station to provide energy for the sanctuary. There were hundreds of players cleaning the ruins and chasing away the beasts. A team of 5 players was trekking in the drainage pipe of the river. It was pitch black, and only the light from the flashlights could be seen. It smells a bit bad here. A player covered his nose. They said that they want to set up a power grid, so they need people to check the situation in the drainage pipe to see if there is any danger, another person said. No wonder no one wants to do this mission. It's too dirty. A person seemed to be obsessed with cleanliness and walked carefully. After a few decades, the drainage pipe was still damp. There was a clear adsorption feeling on the ground, as if the damp and rotten soil had turned into a sticky foreign substance. The team of players walked a few steps forward. Suddenly, they heard a gasp from the depths of the darkness. It sounded like a wind tunnel. Ooh, something's wrong. The players were shocked. Just as they were about to move, they realized that they could not move. A notification appeared on the interface. You have been affected by the Advanced Beast Intimidation aura. You have entered the fear state. What is this? Their faces changed. Rumble, the ground shook violently. A black shadow that filled the entire tunnel rushed toward them like a wall. With a bang, the team of players flew in all directions as if they were hit by a train. They slammed into the walls of the tunnel and died instantly. Although they were not the first batch of players, they were still people who had reached LV-15. Just one hit was enough to send them back to life. The damage was at least 200 to 300. The black shadow was not alone. Behind it, there was a series of black shadows of the same size. After killing the intruders, they did not stop. They rushed out of the tunnel directly and exposed themselves to the sun. Like angry tanks, they rushed onto the ground and went straight for the most eye-catching tower clock. The players who were resting at the tower clock saw the sudden change. They all stood up to intercept the black shadows. However, those who blocked the way were all killed by the black shadows and sent flying. Like a hot knife through butter, no one could stop them. A large group of black shadows ran over the players and crashed into the power plant that was under construction. With a boom, there was an explosion. The black shadows did not stop and crashed into the tower clock. The ground trembled. The tower clock spurted out a large amount of dust and made a tearing sound. It was like the cry of a dying person in despair. It collapsed with a boom. The commotion here had shocked the entire city. Loud and ferocious beastly roars also came from the mouths of the black shadows, shaking the sky. Chapter 2:24. A Thought of Eternity. Chapter 2:25. An hour later, the fire spreading in the clock tower area was extinguished. There were scorch marks everywhere. The power plant under construction was destroyed, and the collapsed clock tower was in ruins. The area was in a mess, and the cleanup mission was increased. A cordon was set up nearby, and Huang Yu was commanding at the scene. Fortunately, there were players cleaning up the ruins, so the situation was still stable. Thousands of players gathered in the distance, looking at the broken scene in shock. A series of cracked footprints were left on the brick ground by the group of black shadows. Their feet had 3 claws, and their shape was long and thin. No one knew what kind of creature it was. At this time, the group of black shadows had retreated to the river channel and disappeared. That was obviously their nest, and no one dared to provoke the group of unknown monsters for the time being. What kind of beast can cause such a commotion? The monsters we encountered in the past few days were only LV-10 or LV-20. I thought there were no powerful monsters, so they were hiding here. I heard from the people at the scene that their detection results were all question marks, and the danger level was extremely lethal. Oh, that's at least LV-40. Let's wait and see. We'll probably have to do the mission soon. Huang Yu arranged the work, turned on the communicator, and reported, "Your Excellency, the situation is temporarily stable. How are the losses?" Han Zhao's tone was calm. "Not very good. The power plant we were building was destroyed, and the construction materials and engineering equipment inside were all destroyed." Han Zhao gritted his teeth. He had expected this. Since the sanctuary was the main storyline, it was very likely that there would be twists and turns. Accidents really did happen. He did not expect that there were powerful monsters hidden in the gray metal ruins. The loss of the construction materials and engineering equipment was secondary. If there was no way to deal with the beasts, it would greatly delay the construction. What kind of beasts are they? We're still investigating, but they're hiding in the drainage channel. We don't know anything about that place, so it's very dangerous. Wait for me. 10 minutes later, Han Xiao arrived at the scene. Everyone gathered around to report. He listened for a while, waved his hand to signal everyone to be quiet, and then came to the footprints to carefully examine. To be able to crack the stone floor, it means that the beast's leg strength is very developed, and it is very heavy. It likes to live in damp and dark places. It is a social animal, its food is unknown, and it is very aggressive. Han Xiao turned on his tablet and searched for Blue Star's illustrated handbook of wild beasts. He found many examples that fit the description. After thinking about it, Han Xiao lifted his windbreaker, and 7 or 8 spider detectors landed on the ground along his legs. They slowly crawled into the river channel in groups to investigate the situation inside. The tablet was connected to the detector's night vision device and infrared vision. While waiting, Han Xiao casually asked, "Are there any powerful beasts in other places?" Huang Yu immediately replied, "No, only here. The cleanup work in the other areas is very smooth." The shocking change here did not delay the other construction. The giant city wall was still under construction, and the residential houses, warehouses, energy plants, internal life support facilities, greenhouses, and farms were all being built at the same time. Only with the help of tens of thousands of players did Han Xiao have enough manpower to fully develop the city. Sanctuary 2 was still struggling to explore the city, and their progress was many times slower than his. The spider detectors sent back images. The walls deep inside the river channel were covered in the mucus secreted by some kind of creature. It was very sticky and disgusting, and it was still slowly dripping down. A small spider was covered in the dripping mucus. Its slender mechanical limb twitched a few times, and it directly stopped functioning as if it was wrapped in amber. Further in, Han Xiao saw a shocking scene. At the end of the river channel, there were countless forks dug by beasts. He ordered the small spiders to split up. As the images continued to be sent back, everyone was more and more shocked. Beneath the gray metal ruins, there was actually a terrifyingly large underground lair. It covered more than half of the West District. These beasts had been in this abandoned city for many years. Oh my God! Han Xiaoxin was slightly shocked. The hidden beast showed its outline in the infrared vision. Han Xiao quickly flipped open the beast illustration handbook and finally locked onto the target this time. Its scientific name is Nigoro Shadow Viper, also known as Shadow Stalker Viper. It is an oviparous animal with 6 legs and 3 claws. Its entire body is covered in a chitin shell, which is divided into head, torso, for limbs, and a long tail. It can reach up to 4 meters in length when fully grown. Claws, tail swings, and bites are its most common attacks. It can secrete a corrosive mucus from its mouth and excrement, which is used to dig its nest. Other than the fact that it did not have a facehugger, this thing was very similar to Xenomorph. Han Xiao compared it to the database of Viper and found that the life force signal of the Shadow Stalker Viper was around level 40. To the current players, every one of them was a mini-boss level monster, roughly estimating that there were more than 1,000 Shadow Stalker Vipers in the nest, which was a huge hidden danger for the sanctuary. If they were not eliminated, accidents like today would keep happening, and it would delay the construction of the West District. Han Xiao suddenly found something strange. Shadow Stalker Vipers like hot environments. Weird, this is a flat area, so it should be cool and humid underground. Why would it attract Shadow Stalker Vipers? Could it be there's an abandoned reactor or high-energy waste underground? He thought to himself and felt that it was best to let the players detect the radiation density. If he guessed correctly, a Shadow Stalker Viper horde would have a wild boss-level Beast King, and only he could deal with this thing. The complex terrain of the nest was the Shadow Stalker Viper's home field. Han Xiao did not want to deal with an entire horde alone. Even with the mechanical guards, he would suffer heavy losses. The players should be able to kill a normal Shadow Stalker Viper with numbers. Since there were players, he had to make the best use of them. Speaking of which, the Shadow Stalker Viper's carcass and eggs are a kind of potion material. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled as he came up with a plan. At this time, Huang Yu was actively giving suggestions and said, I think we can use a large amount of explosives to destroy the underground cavern and cause a landslide to flatten the Shadow Stalker Viper's nest, which will cause the ground of the West District to collapse. However, this is an abandoned city, so it won't be a big problem if it collapses. We can use it for renovation. Good idea. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. He always liked to maximize the benefits within his ability. Directly blowing up the nest of Shadow Stalker Vipers would be a waste. However, Huang Yu reminded him that the Shadow Stalker Vipers would attack violently when disturbed. This was a good way to lure them out. He could set up a trap in advance and give them a head-on blow. He was a man of action. He gathered all the Generation 2, 5 rangers that were patrolling around the river channel, and asked the people of the Dark Net to move the small cannons over. He then arranged them into a formation and aimed them at the river channel. Go in and put in a flashbang. Han Xiao gave a mission to Madblade. Madblade did not say anything and directly rushed in. He did not even bat an eyelid. Minutes and seconds passed. Everyone held their breaths and was very quiet. Occasionally, there would be players who were watching from afar, whispering to each other and staring at the battlefield. The fierce roar of a beast broke the long wait. Accompanied by a short scream, the ground shook slightly. The sound came from the channel and was getting closer and closer. Something was about to come out. Rumble. A large group of Shadow Stalker Vipers rushed out. Their entire bodies were covered in black carapaces, and the 3 pairs of scarlet eyes hidden in the carapaces were filled with anger and irritation. At least 100 Shadow Stalker Vipers appeared, and they immediately noticed the crowd gathered in the distance. They roared and charged toward them. Tut, 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 tut. In the next second, a storm of guns and cannons rained down on the Shadow Stalker Vipers, pushing them back. Dozens of large-caliber machine guns fired, and the steel core bullets shattered their chitin carapaces. The shells cracked, and viscous fluids splashed everywhere. Their roars turned into cries. They struggled to stand up again and again, but they were knocked down by the rain of bullets and pressed to the ground by the continuous kinetic energy. The flashing gun flames illuminated the side of Han Zhao's face time and time again. He slowly lit a cigarette and watched the hundreds of Shadow Stalker Vipers being turned into sieves. Not long after, the machine guns made clicking sounds. The magazines were empty, and the ground was full of bullet shells. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. The whole place was quiet. The tragic bodies of the Shadow Stalker Vipers were scattered all over the ground. Many of the players who were watching turned pale. They were disgusted by this scene. Move the bodies back and put them in the cold storage. Everyone quickly cleaned up the battlefield. Han Xiao switched to Hao Tian to release the flash grenades again. This time, the Shadow Stalker Vipers did not fall for it. After killing Hao Tian, they still hid in the nest and refused to come out no matter what. This way, the mechanical guards were temporarily useless. The open terrain was the best place to use firepower. If they entered the narrow nest, they would only be torn apart by the Shadow Stalker Vipers one by one. It was enough to trick the enemy once. The players had been watching for so long. It was time to find something for them to do. I need some people to clean up this nest. It's best if you can do it within 3 days, Han Xiao said loudly. He quickly set up the mission and sent it out. Prize pool mission. Clean up the nest. After a few days, Han Xiao released another prize pool mission. He realized that prize pool missions could easily ignite the players' passion. As expected, the players who were watching the show were instantly excited. They swarmed over and fought to be the first to accept the mission. The prize pool quickly accumulated over 1 million EXP, and it was still increasing. The quest requirement was to kill the Shadow Stalker Viper and bring back the egg. Contribution points would be awarded through these 2 actions. The top 10 would be rewarded according to their contribution points. Counting the team's ranking, a large number of players rolled up their sleeves and swarmed into the nest to hunt down the Shadow Stalker Vipers. If they were not strong enough, they would make up for it with numbers. Han Xiao turned around and said to Mad Blade and the others, "Take this device and check the radiation density of the nest. Also, check if there are any special shadow stalker vipers. That's the Beast King. Inform me immediately if you find one. If you find anything else, remember to tell me too." The four nodded and entered the nest. Looking at the passionate players, Han Xiao thought to himself, "The shadow stalker vipers are too strong for the current players. In order to get the prize pool mission, the players will need weapons even more urgently. After seeing my mechanical guards, some people will definitely be tempted. It just so happened that he had enough parts. He could sell weapons and make some more money." Chapter 226. However, Han Technician never made deals that would incur losses. His price was very high, and most players could not afford his equipment. He immediately thought of the weapon rental business. Renting out his weapons would be a long-term business with small profits. However, Han Xiao quickly dismissed the idea. If the players damaged their weapons, I would have to pay for it. Some players might even steal my equipment. The rental business is not mature before I can guarantee that the weapons can be retrieved in perfect condition, Han Xiaoxin thought. Concentrated gunshots rang out in the underground nest in the west side of the city. There were also muffled explosions on the surface, causing the ground to tremble slightly. While the players were hunting the shadow stalker vipers, the people from the dark net were not idle either. Based on the images from the detector, they outlined the map of the underground nest and marked out the nest area on the surface. "Your Excellency, the shadow stalker viper's habits are a bit like ants," Huang Yu said. "The nest is complicated and can be roughly divided into two parts, the core area and the active area. The active area takes up 95% of the area, and we're still searching for the core area. We haven't confirmed its location yet." Han Xiao nodded. If he was not wrong, the shadow stalker viper Beast King was in the core area. The Beast King was estimated to be between level 50 and level 60, so it should be a boss. This was the difference in levels. The current players could not kill it even with the number of players, so Han Xiao had to deal with it himself. When he found the core area, he would be ready to attack. The nest was the shadow stalker viper's home ground. On the first day, the players spread out and advanced slowly. Most of the players were beaten to a pulp. It was their first time facing a high-level monster, so the novice players' hearts were destroyed. Han Xiao did not keep an eye on the west side of the city. This was just a small episode in the shelter's construction. He patrolled the construction of the other areas and fulfilled his responsibilities as the person in charge before returning to the workshop to continue building machines. The class change requirement was 5 purple equipment. Now, the composite compounded magnetic chain split blades, iron fist, mounted heavy mechanical arm, and small maneuvering devices could all be made into dark blue quality equipment. As long as they performed well, they could be made into purple equipment. Failed products that did not reach purple equipment filled up half of the room. Only the wealthy Han Xiao dared to burn money like this. In the evening, a player finally came to visit. Jade Green Sky brought a group of team members with him, expressing his intention to purchase equipment. At this time, a large number of players were living in the sanctuary, and it almost looked like a main city. Players could be seen everywhere asking to form teams to do missions, and many mechanic class players had set up stalls to provide repair, manufacturing, and strengthening services. Maple Moon would also set up stalls to kill time. These mechanic class players obtained the blueprints of some low-end machines through knowledge synthesis. They all had their own characteristics, and most of them were gunpowder weapons. The prices of the mechanic class players who set up stalls were very low, so most players who did not have much money were willing to patronize their business. However, Han Xiao did not bother to do such low-level physical labor. To him, it was a waste of time. He was on the high-end route, and the quality of his products was far better than the players. He also had all kinds of blueprints that the players did not have. No one could replace him, so there was no need to compete for business. "You want to buy equipment?" Han Xiao put down the parts in his hands. Jade Green Sky hurriedly nodded. Sky Territory had accepted the prize pool mission and was expected to get a higher ranking. However, other big guilds had come to the sanctuary a few days ago, and they were all strong competitors. Therefore, Jade Green Sky wanted to find another way and buy Black Phantom's equipment. When the open beta started, Jade Green Sky had already bought a lightweight mechanical arm. Until now, it was still his main battle weapon, so he was very confident in Han Zhao's products. Han Zhao pondered. In order to match the increasing strength of the players, he put up some new machines. Han Technician now had 230 million EXP on his interface, which was an astronomical number. Therefore, he was very confident and spent some EXP to get a lot of new blueprints. He had a lot of variety in his inventory. After thinking about it, he also put the Iron Fist mounted heavy mechanical arm and the small maneuvering device on the shop interface. These two machines had a backlog of many failed products, blue equipment, and he had no use for them, so he took the opportunity to get rid of them and make good use of them. However, he did not sell the compounded magnetic chain split blades. This thing could be considered as one of the early divine weapons, and Han Zhao did not want to sell it to the players casually. As soon as the shop interface opened, the people of Sky Territory gasped. The dazzling array of products made their hearts pound, and everyone's eyes lit up. God, the lowest grade is green grade, and there are even blue grade ones. I have never seen them before. I want all of them. Jade Green Sky stared at the heavy mechanical arm, his heart burning with passion. This thing was stronger than the light mechanical arm, and it could greatly increase his strength. He looked at the price, 120,000. So expensive. Jade Green Sky's face twitched. Although the guild was rich, 120,000 was not a small amount. It was enough to buy dozens of guns and a few boxes of ammo. After hesitating for a while, Jade Green Sky made up his mind and decided to buy it. He believed that it would be worth the money. The big guilds were rich. They bought a total of 300,000 worth of equipment and gave it to the first core group to complete the prize pool mission. Han Zhao had earned money and gotten rid of some of the useless machinery. This was a very profitable deal for him. He had set up security measures in these machines. The mechanic class players were only LV-20, and they could only dream of breaking through his security. It was impossible for them to leak the blueprints, so Han Zhao was not worried about selling them. Controlling the source of the technology was equivalent to monopolizing the industry and becoming an oligarch. This was the only company that could generate the most profit. Thud thud. As soon as Jade Green Sky left, Madblade and the others returned with a new discovery. We have detected very high radiation levels, almost reaching the peak of the detector. Maple Moon passed the detector to Han Zhao. Han Zhao was slightly shocked. The radiation levels in the nest were so high. Living in such a high radiation area for a long time would cause creatures to mutate. It could be malignant or benign, depending on the creature's species and habits. Stronger animals had higher resistance, so it was more likely that the mutation was benign. In that case, this Shadowstalker Viper should have mutated creatures similar to elite monsters. Han Xiaoxin thought. We also found the source of the radiation. It's these things. Unknown crystal. A crystal formed for unknown reasons. It has high radiation levels. When the detector was close to the crystal, the radiation level increased significantly. This was indeed the source of the radiation. Han Zhao put on a pair of gloves, picked up a crystal the size of a finger, and looked at it carefully. Where did you find this? The wall deep in the nest, Hao Tian answered briefly. These crystals are embedded in the wall, Madblade added. If not for a layer of mucus being scraped off during the battle, we wouldn't have found them. Furthermore, the deeper we went, the more concentrated the crystals were. Similarly, there were more monsters. We couldn't go deeper, so we came back early. The crystal had its own temperature, and his fingers were warm even through the gloves. This finally solved one of his questions. The Shadowstalker Vipers liked the heat, but they lived here because of this crystal. Han Zhao waved at Madblade. Madblade did not suspect anything and approached. Suddenly, Han Zhao did something shocking. He pinched Madblade's cheek, stuffed the crystal into his mouth, and covered his mouth to prevent him from spitting it out. Swallow it. Frenzied Sword struggled with all his might, but he could not break free from Han Zhao's large hands. His throat moved, and he swallowed the crystal. The three people beside him were stunned. Any reaction? Han Zhao stared at him. You have swallowed a high radiation crystal, not purified. Race detected as human. Yindi lower than 50. No related skills. You have entered radiation damage status. Radiation damage. Maximum health and constitution reduced to 33%. All attributes reduced by 50%. Lasts for 2 hours. You can use related drugs to recover earlier. Mad Blade told him the truth. Players who could not die were the best test subjects. Han Zhao gave Mad Blade a huge red packet of experience as a reward. He nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work." Seeing that he had obtained the EXP, Frenzied Sword felt refreshed and immediately felt comfortable. He looked at the remaining crystals on the table and thought to himself, will there be more EXP if I eat all of them? The taste is quite similar to jelly beans. Seeing Mad Blade's expression, Han Zhao knew what he was thinking. He put away the crystal and dispelled Mad Blade's thoughts. He roughly knew the function of the crystal. Purifying this kind of radiation crystal could condense it into a crystal-like solid energy. It would not pollute or add anything, and it would become a clean energy source. Han Xiaoxin started thinking. There are many such crystals in the nest. He could use elementary purification to purify them and turn them into energy reserves. Also, as long as he made an energy converter, this kind of energy crystal could be used in all kinds of machinery. It was very valuable. Crystal energy was the most used energy source in the magic civilization. It also appeared occasionally in the technological world. In other words, this kind of clean energy crystal could also be called attributeless magic crystal, magic stone, magic crystal, and so on. Mages used magic to extract the energy from the crystal to replenish their magic power or use it as a casting material. There were many uses for it. The density of the crystals should be a clue to the core of the nest. Han Xiaoxin immediately called Huang Yu over. After he told Huang Yu about this, Huang Yu immediately marked an area on the map of the nest based on the new clue. There's a 90% chance that this is the core area, Huang Yu said confidently as he pointed at the map. Very good. Han Xiao nodded. It was time to act. In the middle of the night, the players who did not need to sleep were still fighting in the nest. The prize pool mission motivated the players. Even if there was no mission, killing the Shadow Stalker Viper would give them a lot of experience points. Sky Territory was ranked first in the current ranking. Quick, third tank, pull the monster. Main tank, secondary tank, come back. Pugilists, get close and attack. Esper Group, give it your best shot. If you don't have energy, go to the side and recover first. Mechanics, don't get close. Stand further away and attack from afar. Those who are transporting the eggs, leave quickly. Don't get hit by the shockwaves. The people of Sky Territory were surrounding and attacking a Shadow Stalker Viper like it was a boss. Green Jade Sky was commanding and yelling. They were very passionate. The core group cooperated well and was very organized. The slime in the nest would reduce the speed of the players. Although this was the home ground of the Shadow Stalker Viper, facing the experienced core group of Sky Territory, it was like a fish in a net. No matter how hard it tried, it could not break out of the encirclement. Its health dropped steadily. Slaughter line, everyone attack. All kinds of attacks landed on the Shadow Stalker Viper. Its shell cracked and slime splashed everywhere. Green Jade Sky charged forward with large strides. The right half of his upper body was equipped with a heavy mechanical arm that was several times thicker than his arm. He activated the ability of the mechanical arm. The motor roared, and hot steam spewed out of the ventilation pipes. The heavy iron fist shot out like a bullet and landed heavily on the head of the Shadow Stalker Viper. At the same time, Green Jade Sky let out a hot-blooded roar. Chapter 227. The iron fist hit the chitin's shell. The skull of the Shadow Stalker Viper cracked, and its HP dropped to 0. It let out a painful scream and died on the ground. The air in its lungs was squeezed out from its mouth and nose, and its body that had swelled up due to anger started to relax. Jay Greensky took a deep breath and looked at the damage output ranking. He was number 1 again. The attack power of the heavy mechanical arm was hard for players of the current level to surpass. Furthermore, the heavy mechanical arm had high defense and could be used as a tank to tank monsters. There were a few times when the team was almost wiped out, but Jay Greensky saved them all. When other players were wiped out, they did not die even once. Therefore, their contribution points increased steadily, and they were ranked number 1. This weapon was worth it. Although Black Phantom's items were expensive, they really got what they paid for. Jay Greensky was very happy. How could you call out the name of the move? How embarrassing, President. How old are you? The vice captain complained. I like to call it. None of your business. Jay Greensky was speechless. Why are you playing the pugilist class if you don't call out the name of the move? The carcasses of the Shadow Stalker Vipers and the eggs were both contribution points. The team members started to clean up the battlefield. Woo! Suddenly, the sound of wind whistling came from afar. Something was approaching quickly. A black shadow flashed past the crowd and created a strong wind. It almost made all the people in Sky territory fall. It was so fast that their retina could not catch it. No one saw what it was. What was that? It was gone in a flash. Jade Greensky looked in the direction where the black shadow disappeared and said in surprise, "That seems to be deep in the nest." Everyone was surprised and looked at each other. "Let's go and see." The nest was full of slime that reduced speed. After chasing for a while, the black shadow was long gone. The Sky Territory players were a little discouraged. "Stop chasing, we can't catch up." "Wait, what was that?" Someone noticed something strange. The flashlight shone over, and a pungent smell rushed into their nostrils. The carcasses of the Shadow Stalker Vipers filled the tunnel and went deep into the darkness. It was a shocking scene. The carapace that the players had to put in a lot of effort to penetrate was now like an eggshell that was easily crushed. The corpses were all fresh, which meant that in the short time that they had been chasing, the Black Shadow had taken care of all the beasts blocking his way. The level 40 beasts did not hinder him at all. Everyone immediately thought of Han Shao. It was Black Phantom who just passed by, right? The monster that we've been fighting for so long was easily killed by him. He's definitely a max-level character. The information that players received when they investigated Han Shao was always extremely lethal, and the rest was always a question mark. There had always been people guessing his strength level, and now that they had a personal comparison, they immediately had a more concrete understanding. He was definitely one of the Blue Star's top fighters. Jay Greensky was suddenly delighted. He cleared a path for us to follow. Han Shao, dressed in a black battle suit, quickly shuttled through the nest, following the route indicated by the tactical display screen. Swoosh! 2 Shadow Stalker Vipers jumped out from the darkness, but the mechanical suit's radar had already detected their life signals and heat. Han Shao did not dodge and instantly activated power mode. The biochemical muscles under the armor bulged, and a strong force went through his fists toward the Shadow Stalker Vipers. A head-on clash. Bang! Crushing strength. The carapace exploded, and sticky liquid splashed everywhere. Screams sounded beside his ears. The struggling claws landed on the mechanical suit, but only a spark was created on the exterior armor. Han Shao did not stop. He brushed past the 2 beasts, threw a few punches in an instant, and killed the 2 beasts on the spot. With his LV-55 personal attributes and the superior performance of Viper, plus the level suppression, he could easily kill these Shadow Stalker Vipers. He did not stop at all. He wiped the sticky liquid off the wall and saw that the radioactive crystals were getting denser. We're almost at the core area. The monsters are appearing more frequently. He casually pinned a Shadow Stalker Viper to the wall and killed it. Han Shao checked the map on the display screen and confirmed that the route was correct. The screen showed that the temperature outside was rising. The crystals had their own heat, and the hotter the place, the better the habitat of the Beast King. The high temperature of the crystals made the infrared night vision goggles red, and he could not see clearly. Han Xiao adjusted his vision to normal. His vision instantly darkened, but after a few seconds, it became clear again. Night Stalker, as talent, bad habit, provided him with night vision, and his combat power was increased when he fought in the dark. After passing through a cave, the space suddenly opened up. The thick smell of blood hit his face, and the sticky liquid under his feet was extremely thick. This was an underground cave that looked like a beehive. Large pieces of dark blue radioactive crystals were embedded in the walls, and there were more than a dozen cave entrances that led in all directions. This was the center of the nest. Countless red eyes flashed in the darkness. Dozens of shadow stalker vipers were lying on the ground, showing off to the uninvited guest. There were also a few more ferocious-looking elite monsters mixed in with the beasts. The most eye-catching one was the Shadow Stalker Viper Beast King that was surrounded by the beasts. Its body was 3 times bigger, and it looked down at Han Xiao from above. The sticky liquid in its mouth dripped onto the ground, creating a pungent smell and a corrosive sound. "It's so big, so it must be the Beast King." The swarm of Shadow Stalker Vipers charged toward him. Han Xiao crossed his feet, and his skateboard shoes ignored the sticky terrain. He quickly moved and dodged the Shadow Stalker Vipers. He took out the Ghost Sniper rifle on his back and used it as a rifle. The barrel of the rifle flashed with electric light, and the magnetic needles left behind a trail of blue light. He kept changing his attack target so that he could continuously trigger lethal shot. There was a 1 in 8 to 1 in 4 chance of triggering true damage, and it would not take effect on the same target for 5 minutes. This talent was more useful in group battles. The correct way to use it was to keep changing the attack target to maximize the damage output. Blood exploded, and the needles easily penetrated the shells of the beasts, killing them quickly. An elite monster stealthily circled behind him and launched a sneak attack. As if he had eyes on the back of his head, Han Xiao turned around and launched a powerful kick, flattening the skull of this Shadow Stalker Viper. The monster horde continued to charge forward like a tidal wave, but Han Xiao was like a reef, unmoving no matter how strong the wind blew. With him as the center, the monsters fell one after another, and the horde became thinner. The Shadow Stalker Viper Beast King raised its head and roared. Its voice was ear-piercing, and the sound wave reverberated in the nest, summoning its kin. The players in other places were shocked to find that the Shadow Stalker Vipers fighting with them stopped at the same time and ran toward the depths of the nest without looking back. The tunnel was rustling, and the ground was shaking. A large number of beasts were coming, and it would be harder to deal with them if this dragged on. Han Xiao focused and activated Overload, Flaming Will, and Fatal Critical Hit at the same time, aiming at the Beast King that was wandering around the edge of the battlefield. Buzz! The Gauss sniper rifle fired with a buzzing sound of electric current. A ray of blue light flashed and pierced through the Beast King's shell, exploding a hole in its body. This shot even triggered Lethal Shot, true damage. 2853. A shocking damage popped up, and the Beast King's HP dropped by a lot. It was in so much pain that it roared and rolled around. Han Xiao looked at the Beast King's attributes on the interface. Level 53, Boss Template, High Agility and Endurance, but only 9,000 HP? Han Xiao was shocked. The shot just now took away almost 1/3 of the Beast King's HP. This amount of HP did not match the template of a boss. Could it be an agility-type Beast King that was more aggressive? But its huge size did not look like it. The Beast King rolled around, but unexpectedly, it did not pounce on Han Xiao immediately. Instead, it ran to the corner of the cave and opened its mouth, chewing something hard. Han Xiao looked through the gap between the beasts, and he was shocked when he saw what was happening. The Beast King was eating buckets of high-energy waste marked with radiation. Beasts that ate waste for a long time had a high chance of mutating or gaining special abilities. He noticed that the Beast King's HP was recovering at a terrifying rate. It recovered 1,000 HP in just 2 to 3 breaths. Obviously, eating waste would allow it to recover HP quickly. Han Shao finally understood that this Beast King was the type that dragged people to their deaths. This home ground was very unfavorable for him. He took a deep breath, and the air passed through his lungs to increase the oxygen content of his blood, adjusting his condition to the best. Then, he jumped high into the air, crossing the beasts in an arc, and smashed into the back of the Shadow Stalker Viper Beast King with great momentum. The two of them rolled into a ball. Without waiting for him to stand up, Han Shao bent his knuckles, popped out his fingernails, and stabbed them into the Beast King's shell. At the same time, he activated the thermal incisor gauntlet to melt through the shell. Suddenly, the sound of wind approached, and the Beast King's tail whipped him from behind, almost sending him flying. He could feel the huge force through the mechanical suit, and its durability dropped a little. Han Shao focused and shouted. The bonfire reaction furnace on his back shone brightly, and he pushed the Beast King into the wall with both arms and legs at the same time. With a boom, it was as if the earth was shaking. Stones fell like rain. The man and the beast crashed into the wall and fell into the tunnel on the side. The Beast King roared and wanted to return to the nest to recover HP, but Han Shao grabbed it tightly and dragged it out. He poured energy into the compounded magnetic chain split blades on the back of his hand. The blades floated and rotated at high speed, cutting open the Beast King's shell, revealing the dark purple flesh inside. The battle was like two beasts of the same size colliding. The sound was terrifying, and the walls collapsed one after another. The entire nest began to shake and was about to collapse. The players were shocked and hurriedly ran away. "Run! We're going to be buried alive. This is demolition." Jay Greensky followed the crowd and ran a few steps. Suddenly, he realized something. "No, we can revive. Now is the chance to kill monsters and gain contribution points." As soon as he finished speaking, the wall on the side exploded. Han Shao pushed the Beast King over. Jade Greensky was in the way and was instantly flattened. "Ah, guild leader, you died so tragically." The deputy leader of the first team held his head with a face full of fear. Chapter 228. The sticky liquid splashed out, but it could not damage the corrosion-resistant mechanical suit. The Shadow Stalker Viper Beast King's shell cracked open, and blood and sticky liquid leaked out. It looked horrible. After being beaten up by Han Shao on the ground, its health dropped steadily. The beast swarmed forward like crazy. Han Shao used the Beast King's body as a shield and dodged most of the attacks with his agility. The vision on the tactical display was spinning. Normal people would feel dizzy after just a few glances, but Han Shao was already used to it and was in good condition. Every punch and kick carried a tremendous amount of power, and the surrounding terrain was swept away by a hurricane. It was a complete mess. Viper provided a performance bonus, and his basic combat skills were all maxed out. His melee attack was above average, and the Beast King could not eat waste to recover its health. Its health quickly reached the killing line. Han Shao channeled his energy, and the compounded magnetic chain split blades circled around his forearm, forming a cone that spun at high speed. Like a drill, it drilled into the Beast King's skull. The screams were automatically filtered out by him. He grabbed his wand so that he would not be thrown off by the struggling Beast King. He activated the sunworm and sprayed it at the bloody Beast King's brain. The burnt smell of roasted meat filled the air. The Beast King's body tensed up like a fish on land. "You have killed Shadow Stalker Viper Beast King, LV-53. You have received 132,000 EXP. As soon as the Beast King died, the surrounding Shadow Stalker Vipers roared and charged forward without any fear. They wanted to tear apart this enemy that was harder than steel, and they drowned Han Shao in an instant. The next moment, a strong repulsive force spread out, and all the Shadow Stalker Vipers were blown away at a speed that was even faster than killing them. They crashed into the walls of the nest, and the repulsive force field on Viper's gauntlet buzzed. Rumble. This repulsive force caused a chain reaction. The nest collapsed section by section, and the shaking of the ground was almost like an earthquake. Han Xiao did not want to be buried alive. He bent his knees, and the elastic force of his biochemical muscles gathered on his legs. He stepped on the ground and created a large crack. The small maneuvering device spurted out, and with the support of the two forces, he shot up like a rocket. The soil above his head was knocked away, and his helmet made a loud noise, causing his skull to hurt. In the next second, the road exploded, and a black figure broke out of the ground. His line of sight suddenly opened up, and the night sky hung upside down in his eyes. The west side of the city collapsed with a rumble. Cracks appeared on the ground, spewing out large amounts of dust. The road sank and collapsed. The scene was extremely grand. Some players were crushed to death, while others managed to escape. They watched this shocking scene in horror. The entire city has collapsed. What kind of destructive power is this? Isn't that Black Phantom? He did it. This battle power is definitely that of a max-level boss. All the Shadow Stalker Vipers are buried alive. Does that mean our mission is complete? There doesn't seem to be any notifications. The players were bewildered. From time to time, they would glance at Han Xiao, who was wearing a mecha at the side. Their eyes were burning with passion. They had long seen images of mecha battles on the forums. This time, they had finally seen it with their own eyes. It was even more impressive than in videos, so strong that it made them envious. The revived Jade Green Sky jogged back leisurely. He was shocked by the scene that was beyond recognition. He quickly asked the people beside him. After thinking carefully, he said, "The mission is not over yet. Now is the time to pick up the leftovers." At the same time, there were signs of biological activity in the ruins. The Shadow Stalker Vipers that were not crushed to death struggled to crawl out. Only a small part of the nest had collapsed, but all the paths were blocked. All the beasts were like turtles in a jar. Seeing this, the players rushed up to finish off the beasts. Han Xiao was only responsible for dealing with the Beast Kings. The rest of the monsters were left to the players. He twisted his neck, making cracking sounds to relax his tense nerves. Huang Yu arrived with his men and waited at the side. After the Inhumans clean up all the Shadow Stalker Vipers, you guys excavate the ruins and move all the radiation crystals and corpses into the warehouse. Especially the Beast King's corpses. That is a rare material. Although I destroyed many parts of it, it should still be useful, Han Xiao said casually. Huang Yu glanced at the collapsed ground, swallowed, and nodded hurriedly. It had only been less than half an hour since they left, and Black Phantom had already solved the problem. Even the West District had collapsed. This efficiency shocked Huang Yu. Back in his room, Han Xiao took off Viper and repaired some of the damage. After midnight, Huang Yu finally sent news that the ruins had been cleaned up. Collected 846 Shadow Stalker Vipers' corpses, including 27 mutants and 1 Beast King. More than 300 intact eggs have been stored in the cold storage. Other than that, about 2 tons of radiation crystals have been collected. The 300 pounds of dark blue crystals in the center of the nest seem to have a higher concentration. Alright, Coney Fury has deduced the cause of the crystals. These Shadow Stalker Vipers feed on high-energy waste and have a special reaction with the mucus secreted in their bodies, hardening and forming crystals. Han Xiao was stunned. So, these radiation crystals are actually the excrement of the Shadow Stalker Vipers. You can say that. Han Xiao scratched his head and thought of Mad Blade. Forget it. The truth is too cruel. Better not tell him. I'm afraid he can't take it. The nest was finally cleaned up. The players heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the interface impatiently. Nest cleaning completed. Current prize pool, 1. 34 million EXP. Damage ranking. Number 1, Jade Green Sky. Team. Number 2, Red Carp. Team. Number 3, Don't Sleep During the Day. Team. Those who were on the list were overjoyed. Those who were not on the list were disappointed, but they did not lose out. The EXP from killing the Shadow Stalker Vipers had already filled up the participation fee, so most of them did not lose out. When number 1, Jade Green Sky, was overjoyed. The core group of people in Sky Territory were jubilant. The players beside them looked over enviously and focused on Jade Green Sky's heavy mechanical arm. Sky Territory is still stable. What's that equipment of their guild leader? It looks awesome. I have a friend who's in their group. That equipment is a pugilist, godly equipment. It can both tank and attack, but it's very expensive. Only Black Phantom sells it. Seeing the effect of the heavy mechanical arm, the players were filled with desire. Desire gave birth to demand, and demand was a hidden customer. The ruins needed to be renovated. The person in charge of the West District assigned the work, and the players who had rested for a while participated again. The next day, Han Xiao woke up to the sound of construction in all directions. He rubbed his temples helplessly. He was already used to it. It was indeed very fast to let the players help build the city, but there was a small flaw. The players did not sleep and were working 24 hours a day. This kind of noise pollution almost caused him to have a nervous breakdown. The secret base had good soundproofing, and it was located in a remote area. Han Xiao went there secretly a few times, hid a lot of resources, and strengthened the defense measures. On the surface, Han Xiao was not working in the base. Arriving at the bustling workshop, Han Xiao walked to his own VIP room with ease. The crystals were neatly placed in a few boxes. They were blue, and the halo was like a fog. It was magnificent and beautiful. However, when he thought about how this thing was the excrement of wild beasts, Han Technician could not appreciate it no matter how beautiful it was. He put on his gloves tighter. Radiation crystals can be turned into energy blocks after purification. Pure energy with no attributes. Although it is said to be high concentration, it should be elementary according to the universe standard. The conversion rate is about 100. 2 tons of raw materials can make about 45 pounds of energy blocks, which can be used as emergency energy storage. This is an unexpected surprise. There were many types of energy: electromagnetic energy, nuclear energy, photon energy, planetary energy, antimatter energy, dark energy, psionic energy, and so on. If these were psionic energy blocks, he could even buy the entire blue star. Unfortunately, only very advanced civilizations could collect, convert, and use psionic energy. Low-level civilizations could not use psionic energy blocks even if they obtained them. Furthermore, civilizations that discovered psionic energy too early basically self-destructed. Studying psionic energy before the technology was mature was suicide, evaporating along with the surface. There were also 300 pounds of dark blue crystals with a higher concentration. Han Xiao guessed that these were the remains of the excrement of the Beast King. The Beast King occupied the most high-energy waste, so the crystallization rate was the highest, barely reaching medium concentration. The purification rate would be much lower, and it would be able to make about 10 pounds of high-energy Ona energy blocks. 300 pounds, this guy can really shit. Han Xiao shook his head. Elementary purification was at max level. The knowledge of the energy branch could be combined to create the energy block purifier, which was a more sophisticated machine. Han Xiao thought for a while and thought of the combination of knowledge. He had a lot of experience, and after a few fusions, he got the blueprint and immediately started to create it. 2 hours later, the creation was successfully completed. Basic Energy Block Purifier refines minerals and crystals that contain radiation and energy into energy blocks. Conversion rate is average, and speed is low. The design of this thing was very magical. The opening was shaped like a funnel and could automatically release raw materials. Energy block purifiers were the most common in crystal civilizations. Magic and technology coexisted, and energy blocks were the main energy source. Japan's headquarters, Planet Lani, was a crystal civilization. This kind of civilization was a little strange, but the universe was vast, and there were many strange things. Han Xiao arranged the crystals and set the automatic release. The purification process was automatic, and there was no need to do anything. It will take about half a day to completely purify everything. I just have to wait. Han Xiao clapped his hands. There were still corpses and eggs left in the cold storage. Those could be used to make medicine, but he was not a pharmacist. The Lewis Research Institute was in the Western continent, and it was a little far away. The transportation cost was too expensive, and if it took too long, the materials would lose their activity. Han Xiao thought for a while and decided to hire a pharmacist. Chapter 229. A secret meeting was taking place at the headquarters of Star Dragon's Division 13. A few important members of Hesla's military intelligence department were there, and Gu Hui was there to receive them personally. The expedition was imminent, and the Six Nations were in frequent contact to discuss the final details. In a meeting room, both parties were whispering to each other. Buzz! The sudden vibration of a phone silenced everyone in the room. They all turned to look at the source of the sound with dissatisfaction. Who was playing around in such a serious situation? The source of the sound was the director of Division 13, Gu Hui. Everyone was confused. The Hesla people seemed to be saying, even the director of Star Dragon is so unprofessional. Gu Hui frowned. He had a few phones, but all of them were switched off during meetings. Only the most important calls would be made to this phone. Gu Hui took out his phone and looked at the caller ID. His eyes narrowed, and he said in a low voice, "Pause the meeting. I need to take this call." After that, Gu Hui left in a hurry with his phone. He did not care about the reaction of the others. The Hesla people were shocked. The director of Division 13 had abandoned an important meeting to take a call. Who was calling? Who was so important? Could it be the leader of the higher-ups? Why did he not use the internal line? Gu Hui went to the quiet room next door and answered the call. "Why are you calling? Are you surprised?" Han Xiao's teasing voice came from the phone. The number that Han Xiao used to call Gu Hui was naturally the identity of Zero. Ever since the information leak, he had become an important target of Star Dragon. Ever since the Dark Crow Valley battle, Han Xiao had disappeared without a trace. Star Dragon's intelligence department could not find any trace of him. Gu Hui would not miss this precious opportunity to communicate with him. In order to answer Han Xiao's call, he did not mind canceling an important meeting. "What do you want this time?" After their previous contact, Gu Hui had a general understanding of Han Xiao's character. He was purposeful and would not call just for pleasantries. Hence, he went straight to the point. "I want to meet someone. Oh, his name is... Wait, let me check the bounty list. Oh, her code name is Yeching. She's a pharmacist." Gu Hui was taken aback. He instructed his secretary to investigate this person, and soon, the results were out. Yeching, whose ability was to control plants, was a top-notch pharmacist. She had once used an untested medicine to spread a strong, contagious disease, causing a large number of casualties. As a result, she was put on a bounty by various countries. A few years ago, she was arrested and was currently locked up in Bell of Death Island. Bell of Death Island was a prison used by the Six Nations to imprison criminals. It was located alone in the sea with mysterious coordinates and tight security. "What do you want her to do?" Gu Hui was puzzled. "I have something to do," Han Xiao said. Gu Hui muttered, "Even I can't casually take people from Bell of Death Island. It's against the rules." This was a tactful rejection. Han Xiao laughed and suddenly changed the topic. "I heard that you guys are going to start an expedition. TSK. The Six Nations are going to join forces and attack Andrea from more than 10 directions. There are aircraft carriers, planes, and everything else. What a huge force. Do you think the Germinal organization will just sit back and wait?" He tightened his grip on the phone. "What information do you have?" I have plenty of information. The location of the base, military strength, missile deployment, and all kinds of inhumane plans of the Germinal organization." Han Zhao's tone annoyed Gu Hui, but he had no choice but to fall into the trap. "Emerald grass is yours," he said with a deep voice. "Okay," Han Xiao agreed without hesitation. Originally, he had planned to give all the information about the Germinal organization to the Six Nations before the war to increase the Six Nations' advantage. Now, it was a good opportunity to exchange for someone he needed. In version 2.0, Yeching was an important character in Blue Star. As a top-notch pharmacist, she had researched the mutation virus and created the medicine to suppress the virus, which had played a significant role. In Han Zhao's previous life, Bell of Death Island was a mysterious place, and no players had found the coordinates. However, in version 2.0, the players were able to find a piece of information. The mutation virus had spread and affected Bell of Death Island, leading to a dangerous situation. However, the criminals locked up in the prison of the Six Nations had solved the disaster and escaped from Bell of Death Island. Etching had escaped during this crisis. As the saying went, the prison was always full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. The prisoners who had been locked up for many years rushed out and became the new characters in version 2. They were like dragons crossing the river, overturning the original situation when the disaster was spreading. The information will be sent to you gradually. I will decide on the location of etching. After that, Han Xiao hung up the phone. Gu Hui's expression changed a few times. Only Han Xiao dared to hang up on him, and he could not do anything about it. A prisoner in exchange for key information, this was definitely a good deal. Furthermore, Gu Hui also realized another benefit. He has disappeared for so long. This meeting is a good opportunity to find out where he is. Han Xiao was still on the agent file, where he had gone, what he had done, and whether he had joined any organization were all mysteries that Star Dragon was curious about. This was a good opportunity to investigate. In the workshop of Sanctuary 3, after hanging up the phone, Han Xiao waited for 30 seconds and sent the first set of information to Division 13. He kept the rest for the time being. He knew that he could not hand over all the information in one go. If I can get Yeching this time, not only can I get her to help with the research of the medicine, but I can also make Sanctuary 3 the first place to suppress the mutation virus in version 2. With my name on the Sanctuary, the safer it is, the greater my influence will be. But Star Dragon knows that Yeching has been swapped with me, and they will not give up this opportunity. If they find out that Yeching is working here, they will guess that Black Phantom is me, and my identity will be exposed. Thinking about the pros and cons, Han Xiao suddenly realized something. He had hidden his identity because he was weak, but now, with the dark net behind him, he stood at the top of the planet and did not need to hide from his enemies. At the same time, the Germinal organization was facing destruction and could not even take care of itself, so it did not matter if he hid his identity or not. He was suddenly enlightened. Unknowingly, his old enemy was no longer a giant in his eyes and had grown to the point where he could face the most powerful organization on the planet. Looking at it from another perspective, exposing his identity could combine the influence of Zero and Black Phantom. He was 80% sure that he would get legendary points, and the player's impression of him would improve. With his own deeds, the players might mistake him as the main character of Blue Star and steal Bennett's limelight. Let's play it safe first. About my identity, I'll think about it after the war. Although he saw the benefits, Han Xiao decided to play it by ear. He felt that he was never reckless. The energy block refiner was still working. Han Xiao locked the door and left, patrolling the construction site with his hands behind his back. When he passed by the city wall construction area, he suddenly heard a commotion. He paused and walked over. The construction team was surrounding a large crane, and when they saw Han Xiao approaching, they greeted him respectfully. "What's wrong?" Han Xiao asked. "The crane is malfunctioning and can't be started." "We can't find the reason," someone said helplessly. Han Xiao heard this and thought, "Wow, isn't fixing cars a specialty?" He rolled up his sleeves and said eagerly, "Bring me all the tools." The construction team then remembered that their boss was a mechanic, so they hurriedly moved the parts and tools over. Han Xiao climbed up the crane to check the malfunction. He quickly found the problem and picked up the tools to fix it. His hands moved up and down like shadows, and his speed was shocking. The construction players beside him were shocked. His hand speed was at least 50 years of being single. "So, single people have an advantage playing mechanics," one of the players said proudly. "I'm the man who's going to be the Machine King. You've made up your mind." As he repaired, Han Technician decided to strengthen the crane on a whim. He turned the last screw. Done. Han Xiao clapped his hands and let the construction team try to start it. The strengthened crane seemed to have taken an aphrodisiac. It twitched up and down vigorously and smashed the ground loudly. The construction team could not keep up with the rhythm and hurriedly dodged. It was chaos. At this time, the player welding the steel bars on the city wall suddenly looked at the wilderness and shouted, "Someone's coming." Han Xiao quickly walked up the scaffolding on the city wall and looked into the distance. A group of people in ragged clothes appeared in the wilderness and slowly walked toward the sanctuary. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.